Oh, we're on the air. Okay. Well, welcome everyone to the Planning Commission meeting of May 18th, 2023. And our city attorney, I see you're there on Zoom, and everybody else is here except for Wendy Fastberg, who has an excused absence tonight. Let's see. So the Pledge of Allegiance, Tom, could you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Ready again. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, Tom. Approval of agenda. Are there any changes, or does anyone want to move to approve?
I move approval.
Second.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
So it's unanimous, Effie, if you're listening. Next is announcements and introductions. Let's start at Greg. Do you have any announcements or introductions?
I don't, thanks.
Dennis.
I have none tonight.
John.
Nothing here.
Nothing, Bob. I just want to mention one thing. I did have Epic EPIC come to my house. Brian Cameron and Mike Sage gave me a lot of really good advice at no cost, by the way. They'll come to anybody's house and they're going to send me some written findings so I can reduce the fire risks at my house. So I really appreciate that. Now, the next item is oral communications.
Mike, can I back up for just a second? No, John reminded me on the way in this evening. Gloria Molina, one of the supervisors of LA County, passed away. And I want to just acknowledge all of her work, mostly in the San Gabriel Valley, but obviously running the Board of Supervisors along many years. And well saluted on all the television stations. And when you look at somebody having a track record like that, because she was on the council in LA and then she was in the legislature and then on the Board of Supervisors. So somebody dedicated to that, even though we pay for that, it's still, pretty noble profession if you do the thing right. So I just want to remember Gloria.
Thank you, Dennis. Next is public comment. These are public comment for things that are not on the agenda. Is there anyone who wishes to speak out there on something that's not on tonight's agenda? No? Okay, then we'll go on to the consent items, which is approval of the minutes for May 4th, 2018. Does anyone want to change anything?
I have a couple of minutes. Here's a card.
Like YouTube?
If I can just get my packet unpacked here.
Yeah, okay.
Just give me a second. One of the on page 3 on item 3, second paragraph, following a brief discussion, Commissioner Washburn, I didn't motion because motion can be a verb, but it's not. It's moved is to be said as Washburn moved and Commissioner Leah seconded the motion to approve. It's a verb.
And he's not a commission.
I'm sorry?
And Bob is not a commission.
Right. I put ER, in fact, after the commissioner in front of Bob's name. So
okay.
You got to give me all the letters you can get, Bob. That was it. They're just nits, as I say. Otherwise, I would move approval with those changes.
All right. And the only little minor thing
right.
I had was YouTube on page 2 at the end of the first sort of paragraph there. It's just a spelling error. So we have a motion to approve with those changes. Second, all those in favor? Aye. All right, there you go. Unanimous. Next is this is a public hearing. It's file site plan review 2022-006, continuing from April 20th, 2023, regarding an 1,833 square foot addition to 5222 Dantes View Drive and other changes. I think we can start out with a staff report, if that's okay.
Thank you and good evening, commissioners. So just a recap, at the April 20th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting, file number SPR-2022-006 was continued to the date certain meeting of May 18th, 2023, which is tonight. Because it was continued to a date certain, no new public hearing notice was sent out because of the fact that the project was already noticed ahead of the April 20th meeting and continued to a date certain meeting. At the April 20th meeting, the commissioners provided several recommendations for the applicant, and the commission also provided direction to staff.
Could I ask, I'm sorry for interrupting, Jaclyn, but could I ask a question? Would you like Commissioner Leah to leave the dais or the room or whatever, or
I can jump in here as well. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear your voice, your disembodied voice from somewhere.
Okay, great. Sorry.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Commissioner Leah should announce the reason for his recusal and step down from the horseshoe.
Reason is I own property within 500 feet of the subject property.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But he can remain in the room, or can he, or he has to go in the chambers or something?
The annex would be great. If it's not set up, then he can remain in the chambers.
Who wants to later game?
All right. I apologize, Jaclyn.
That's okay. Thank you for catching that, Chair Harrison.
Thank you.
And if I can ask for one more thing, eat the mic, please, because the system is actually quite mellow and so is your voice. So it's hard to hear some of what you're saying.
I'll speak a little louder. Can you hear me?
Yeah, it's fine. now. Thank you.
Okay, where was I? Okay, on April 20th, the commission provided several recommendations for the applicant and provided direction to staff to prepare a resolution for approval of the project. At the April 20th meeting, staff did mention that the hearing notice erroneously stated the Oaks HOA was the project applicant, and at that meeting, staff did clarify that the correct applicant is Miguel Loayza, just to reiterate that. Staff did receive a few additional items of public correspondence since that prior meeting, and those additional items have been included in your packets and were distributed to the commission for the ones that weren't in the packets ahead of tonight's meeting. I also want to note one change to page 4 of the resolution, finding number 3 in regards to CEQA. So that amended resolution is also in front of you tonight. There was additional language added by staff once the packets had already been mailed out. So there are just a few additional categorical exemptions that are listed. If you go to page 4 of the resolution, just to quickly recap, those additional categorical exemptions are 15302 and 15332. That sentence was just added in the resolution. So that is the only change. Okay, and as a reminder, this is a request for a site plan review to construct a 1,833 square foot addition to the existing 2-story single-family residence located at 5222 Dantes View Drive. It's within the residential single-family zoning district. So we went through the project at the April 20th meeting, but just as a recap, it is located in the Saratoga Hills community, again, within the RS zoning district. And the red arrow here points to the project site. And then this is just a little bit more of a close-up view of the site. It's an interior lot. It's 1100 square feet. The subject site is currently developed with an existing 2-story single-family residence and a garage that has been converted to an ADU under a separate permit. There's also exterior improvements such as a swimming pool, landscape, and hardscape. So at the April 20th, 2023 meeting, the Planning Commission continued this item to the meeting of May 18th, 2023, and requested that the below information be provided by the applicant. Number 1, provide an interim maintenance plan, which should include detail on how the current conditions of the property will be remedied or maintained in the time between approval of the project and construction, to include removal of the on-site abandoned vehicle, weed abatement, removal of debris and dead plants within the front yard, and a timeline for when and how frequently these items will be accomplished. And number 2, revise the front facade of the residence in accordance with the architecture review panel's recommendations. Number 3, revise the window and roof on sheet A10 of the plans to accurately reflect the existing front facade. And number 4, provide a project narrative, which should include a written description of the proposed project and proposed rehabilitation efforts. Okay, and here is number 1 that the commission asked for, which is an interim maintenance plan. As you can see in the photo on this slide, the weeds that were previously existing at the property and the potted plants, things like that in the front yard, have been cleaned up in the time since the previous meeting and now. And the applicant has provided an interim maintenance plan that has been attached in the packets in front of you tonight in full. But on this slide, I've just summarized the maintenance actions that the applicant is proposing. Again, they have already accomplished a lot of the landscaping efforts that were asked of them. So the maintenance plan essentially addresses how they propose to maintain that landscaping. And the vehicle has since been removed since the previous meeting as well. So the first thing is that yard plantings will be watered as necessary. Yard maintenance, which will include raking, trimming, weeding, etc., will be accomplished either bi-weekly or weekly as needed. The pool is to remain empty and fully secured at all times, and waste and debris will be collected and disposed of. The existing structure is also to be maintained in a good state of repair at all times, with no public nuisances on site. I do want to mention that code enforcement did do a site visit last week to verify that the above actions are either have been accomplished already or in the process of being accomplished. Code enforcement did not observe any public health or safety hazards at the time of their site visit. And they did observe that mulch has been put down. The pool is drained and is in the process of being drained regularly as necessary as more water collects, and that the actions that the applicant has described have already been taken, have indeed been taken.
Can I just interrupt? I'm sorry, I was reading something. Who confirmed all that you just said?
A code enforcement went out to the site last week.
Thank you.
Okay, so number 2 that the planning commission asked for was revisions to the front facade. Previously, the architecture review panel had made suggestions about creating differentiation between the first and second floors at the front facade. And so this new front elevation shown here depicts how the applicant is proposing to accomplish that sort of differentiation between the first and second floor. They're proposing a new vertical siding on the second floor facade shown in the elevation. And you can also see in the sort of legend that I've cropped here and put on the slide, it's a hardy plank fiber cement that will be painted glacier white. Okay, and this next sheet A10 revisions. This was requested by the commission that the applicant revise sheet A10 for consistency with the existing conditions at the site. And so they have revised that window placement to more accurately reflect the existing site. There's also a note, as you'll see on here, that this window needs to be legalized under this permit. Windows require permits from building and safety, but because this window looks like was installed without the benefit of permits at the time that the windows for the ADU were installed, which did have permits, this window now needs to be retroactively permitted through the building and safety division, which they will accomplish as part of this larger project. And we do have that added as a condition of approval in the resolution as well. And lastly, the commission asked for a project narrative. So this is a summary of the project as submitted by the applicant. And on this slide, you can also see a photo of the existing house, which shows that the vehicle is gone. The landscaping has been cleaned up and mulch has been installed since the April 20th meeting. So the summary of their project is the scope of work includes rehabilitating a deteriorated home that had not been properly maintained by the previous owner and adding additional square footage in order to house a family with 5 children, raising and replacing the existing roof and replacing the exterior stucco with new smooth stucco, and adding vertical hardy planks at the front right elevation. The scope of work also includes replacing the driveway, cleaning the surrounding yard, and installing landscaping and hardscape. I do want to mention on this slide that their project does not require the installation of solar. Solar is only required for new residential structures, so that is not part of the applicant's scope of work. Here we have their proposed site plan. There's not too much that has changed since the previous time that the commission saw this project, but it is in color this time. And I do have a legend included on the right-hand side of the slide, so you can see what the different colors are referring to. But there is no change in what they're proposing to the structure from the previous time that the commission saw this site plan. Okay, moving on to the findings for a site plan review. The proposed project complies with all applicable provisions of the development code. The proposed project is consistent with the general plan and any applicable specific plan and any special design theme adopted by the city for the site and the vicinity. The approval of the site plan review is in compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act. The proposed structures, signs, site development, grading, and or landscaping are compatible in design, appearance, and scale with the existing uses, development, signs, structures, and landscaping for the surrounding area. The site is adequate in size and shape to accommodate the proposed structures, yards, walls, fences, parking, landscaping, and other development features. And the proposed project is designed to respect and integrate with the existing surrounding natural environment to the maximum extent feasible. So to address the above findings, staff has prepared draft Planning Commission Resolution number 2023-754, as was directed by the Planning Commission at the April 20th meeting, and the justifications for the above findings are included within that resolution. So staff concludes that the proposed project will not alter the existing use of the subject site, which is an allowed use in the RS zoning district. The existing residence is legal nonconforming in regards to the side setback, and the proposed project will maintain that existing nonconformity. The proposed project meets applicable development standards for the RS zoning district. With the proposed additions, the dwelling will exceed the range of home sizes in the immediate vicinity and will result in a FAR greater than that of existing FARs in the immediate vicinity. The ARP recommended approval of the project. The project is exempt from CEQA review pursuant to section 15061 subsection B3 and section 15301 subsection E1 of the California CEQA guidelines. Additionally, the applicant has provided the requested supplemental information and amended the plans per the Planning Commission's recommendation at their April 20th, 2023 meeting. So staff's recommended action is that the commission review new materials and revisions provided by the applicant, and consistent with the commission's direction on April 20th, consider Planning Commission Resolution number 2023-754 to approve file number SPR-2022-006. Thank you, and I'm available for questions.
Thanks, Jaclyn. Do any of the commissioners have questions at this point?
I have one quick one on the, the number 4 project narrative. I'm guessing that the phrase raising and replacing the existing roof means at the site where the proposed second-story additions are in the front and on the back of the house. Is that correct?
That's correct. In regards to raising the roof, that's where the roof is being raised, but I believe the whole roof is being replaced as part of the project. I believe their roof plan says their existing roof is in a state of.
It's not raising
disrepair.
the entire roof
No.
of the house, just where the proposed additions are being made.
Right, raising in that area and then replacing the rest of it.
Thanks.
No other questions?
I did have a quick question. When code enforcement confirmed various things that have been done from the last meeting to today, including, I think you said the draining of the pool. Do you know whether they confirmed whether any other activity has taken place in the backyard other than the draining of the pool? Because I drove by, but of course I can't see what happened in the backyard.
I think the property owner would be able to confirm as well if anything is different from when code enforcement was there, but I don't believe the landscaping has been carried around the backyard yet. I believe the plan is to do the landscaping in the back as part of the overall project, and then was just to beautify the front for the intent of during construction, and at this time period, the neighbors wouldn't see the yard in the state that it was previously in.
And then thank you. And my other question was, I've seen some representations in the documents that this, at the end of the day, if this is approved and completed, it would ultimately be a 7-bedroom residence with 7 bathrooms. This is the representation that someone made smarter than I, who reviewed the plans. And I wondered whether you could confirm that.
I counted 8 bathrooms last time.
You counted 8?
7
Let me
bedrooms,
double
8
check that.
bathrooms. Yeah. 7.
Maybe it was 1 bathroom per bedroom,
Right.
plus another one.
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No.
No. Okay. Well, I'm just going to note that we did receive correspondence from Amanda Southwell. This is in addition to the previous correspondence. More from Amanda Southwell, Jerome Connolly, Bob Leah, Candace Weber. She's the president of the HOA, and Connor Southwell. Is it all right if we just open and close, have the public hearing right now? Are we ready for that? And then we can ask more questions of the applicant and staff and make comments. Is that all right? All right. So then let's open the public hearing. I have 3 cards here. I don't know if everyone wants to speak. I don't know if anybody's online. I can't tell if anybody's raising a hand to speak.
Sarah Harrison, I'm monitoring online, and right now I do not see anyone.
Oh, okay, so it's you, Church. Okay, all right. So first, if you want to speak, Jessica Levy.
Again. So I just wanted to mention that evening that we left very late last meeting. Not even 12 hours after I left, my husband was already on the phone. And 8:30 the following morning, we already had somebody working on what you gentlemen asked to do. As you can see the pictures. That following Tuesday, the vehicle was also removed. So pretty much what I promised you guys I was going to do. And if you guys approve me tonight, everything that I promised I'm going to do just to show you I am going to get it done. Like I said, this project just in the front, I went a little bit above and beyond what you guys asked for cleaning up there. It was a lot of money out of pocket just for the landscaping and the person doing the stuff, which, I mean, obviously it's temporary because when I do the project itself and it's done, what I plan on doing in the front yard is going to be much nicer than what it is right now. Everything's going to be taken care of. I mean, I just wanted you guys to see our sincerity and our wanting to take care of things quickly. So you can see that we are honest and truthfully speaking people. And we got everything done the way that you guys asked us to and above.
Thank you.
So, just to add just a few extra things. I mean, honestly, because my neighbors are saying, certain things and sending you guys letters that we are not honest people. We are not, responsible homeowners, which is not true. I mean, because as you can see, I'm standing before you gentlemen, trying to do my best to take care of this property. I'm doing everything legally by code, wanting to pull permits, get everything done the correct way. Yet I'm being criticized by the South Wells next door to me on a project that I'm doing legally. And they did major construction inside their home, and you can check records with city with absolutely no permits. And that is a kitchen remodel, electrical, bathroom remodel, a gas pipe outside, French doors. All of this was done. It's public records. So as you can see, there was not one permit pulled on the work that they did, but yet I'm being criticized by them and them wanting to stop me from doing work that I'm obviously doing by code and legally, doing everything the right way, taking the steps that we're supposed to do. So I just wanted to add that because I know that there was other comments sent forth by them. I saw it on, the city records. So I'm just wanted to throw that in there and hoping that you guys would see, the same way that I need to take care of things. Like any other homeowner doing wanting to do work on the home should also have the same steps taken for them as well. So I hope you guys got to drive by. I heard that John drove by. And to answer one question in regards to the backyard, the backyard was cleaned up. I am maintaining the backyard as well, the weeds. That will be also, while I do take care of the weeds in the front, the backyard will also be maintained during construction. So whatever weeds are there, we mowed down, trimmed down. Trees are, organized and nice, cleanly, nice. Whatever I have back there is all organized. The pool is being drained. Like Jaclyn did say, code enforcement was out there last week to see the pool and what I've done in the backyard. And yes, I am draining the pool twice a week. If it needs more, bi-weekly, whenever it needs, I will drain it as water collects, like Jaclyn said. But the backyard, it is being maintained as well. It's organized and clean back there.
All right. Thank you.
If you have any other questions, I'm here, not going anywhere.
Yeah, please stay because
wait.
we will have questions. Go ahead.
No problem.
Yeah, just a few questions.
Sure.
Thank you for testifying again. Appreciate it.
Not a problem.
So in cleaning up the front yard, I thought I read somewhere that you did some weed abatement. I know you cut down the weeds. Do you know whether they were actually removed or just cut down?
They were cut down and removed as much as possible. And we did, before we put the mulch down, we did also lie down that material.
That black material?
Yes, the one that's specifically for preventing weeds from coming through. But obviously nothing is 100%. And if anything does come up, we'll take care of it.
And then, that's, you're right. Weeds will come through.
Yeah.
Once we're past the rainy season, so it probably won't be nearly as much.
Yeah.
Now the pool, you cleaned, you drained it. Did you clean it also or just?
It's all cleaned up.
And the only the only water that's going to accumulate in there is rainwater,
rainwater and then
some runoff.
Well, no, so when code enforcement came out last week, there is there is a crack because obviously it's a very old pool. So there's some water that's seeping through from
The seep's
underground.
up.
Yeah. So I do have the pump in there and he saw it. So I am going there twice a week. If needed, I'll go more. Plug in the pump. I am draining it. I'm constantly draining to make sure that there's no water in it.
I read somewhere recently, it takes a 1/16 of an inch of standing water to breed a zillion mosquitoes. There's some amazing number. Yeah.
That's why I'm going there so often to drain whatever water does collect.
And I'm not even talking about septic conditions, just any conditions.
Oh, I know. Yes, I know.
And then with all the rain we've had, I don't know the rest of you, but we've had more gnats and moths and stuff all over Calabasas.
I have the same issue in the area that I'm in right now.
Yeah.
But yes, whatever water is collecting in there from that.
You have one of those drains that sits down at the drain level, a portable drain.
Yeah, I have one of those portable pumps.
Pumps.
Yeah,
Oh, good.
like an orangey yellow colored one.
Yeah.
And I unplug it up. I can't leave it all the time because
Sure.
turn out the motor if there's no water in there.
Sure.
But I am draining it out with the pump as much as the pump will take out. And if necessary, just take out the rest of the water, whatever you can with, a bucket. and
I can't recall, do we have a landscape plan for both the front and the back associated with this project?
It's for the whole property.
Just for the whole property? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everything will be kept. Like I said, when we left that meeting that night, we were already on the phone, and 8:30 the following morning, they were already there starting to take care of what you guys asked for. We
And
did everything as fast as possible for you
I
guys.
mean, I guess I don't know that there's any technical limit to bathrooms and bedrooms in a house. And I'm a little reluctant to ask, but if you don't mind, why are you going to have so many baths?
So the bathrooms, there's bathrooms in the bedrooms, and there's one, the other bathroom is a guest bathroom downstairs. So you don't have to have, if you have guests over, they don't need to go into one.
So each bedroom has its a
bathroom.
dedicated bathroom.
Yeah.
What lucky kids.
They don't need to share anymore.
No, it's-
We're trying to do the best that we can for our kids. Like I said, I have 5 kids. They want their own rooms. They want their own bathrooms. They're getting older. They want their own privacy. So we're doing our best, even with my husband's injuries. He had a really bad boating accident last year.
Oh.
That's why he's not here. He had to have a procedure done today. He had a schedule for Monday, but they rescheduled on him. He's doing his best. He's going out there and working and trying to do whatever we can. We just want to try to create a happy family, make everybody happy,
Now, I saw that in the draft resolution, there is I can't remember the condition number, but there is a condition, I believe, that appends the maintenance plan. I don't know if it physically appends it, but it references the maintenance plan as a condition of approval. I just want to make sure you're aware of that. So the maintenance plan that you submitted.
Maintenance plan. Yes, it was one of the conditions that you guys had let us know.
So each and everything that is on this maintenance plan is required to be maintained
And it will be.
throughout the project until what, Jaclyn, a occupancy permit or something is, how long does this go on? I mean, it has to have a sunset.
Even after the project.
Well, I assume you'll have
Yeah.
gardeners and,
Somebody always there to maintain our yard and everything.
well, be careful. Don't be careful to tell me what you're always going to do unless you,
I did want to
Mean
say
it.
one thing though, that you guys couldn't see in the pictures, after I sent those pictures to Jaclyn. Where the front door is, obviously some of the stucco was broken and falling apart and really ugly. So we did have that straight down, and we did paint that area and paint the front door. So that also looks a little bit more appealing from a street view when you're driving by. And we did add a little more. That's what-
my specific question was, when does the maintenance plan end, if ever?
The intent is for the maintenance plan to be in effect through the duration of construction. So the way it's worded in the condition is it says that the maintenance plan is applying to all properties not within the construction area. It can be reworded if you'd like to be a little bit more specific as to during construction. Okay.
Yeah, and that purpose obviously is because to maintain landscaping, for example, where you've got construction going on would be a little difficult.
Well, and
unnecessary.
they're going to have a very different maintenance situation when all is said and done, if this is approved. It's going to be very different than this.
Whatever adjustments need to be made, we'll accommodate to make sure that everything is taken care of.
Well, normally we don't have a maintenance plan we have a landscape plan. And if that's implemented correctly, we don't normally have a maintenance plan for a landscape to associate it with the landscape plan, do we?
No. Well, the maintenance plan, if you'll remember when we discussed it last meeting, is an interim maintenance plan. The word interim isn't showing up in either the condition or on the title of that plan, I don't think. Okay, in the condition, it does say interim. It's intended to make sure everything's copacetic, basically from the present day through construction until they have this new landscape in place, in which case, once that happens, they're obligated to maintain it the same as any other property owner.
I do know that we've had some conditions where a landscape is proposed and there's a condition that basically requires that landscape plan, once implemented, to be maintained properly.
We can add that, obviously, if the commission wants.
Well, I'm thinking, is there a final approval of a landscape plan?
We do. We verify the landscape plan because of the water efficient landscape. As part of our final inspections, we'll see the landscape gets installed. It's something we recognize doesn't have to be installed at the same time of a of an occupancy approval. So they can occupy the dwelling, but the landscape may still take some time to be put in, but we make it a practice confirming it got installed.
Ms. Levy, I don't want to keep you up there too long, but just a couple more questions.
Sure.
I heard from Jaclyn that I think it's the window, the bigger window on the ADU
Yeah.
was not permitted.
So here's what happened when we did the ADU, because we did everything together, obviously, because you have to do the stucco, brow cutting, all of that when you stucco a home. This was supposed to be in the permits with the ADU. I don't know if it was an error on behalf of the other architect. If you guys remember, we had to fire the other architect that we had, and that's what was taking us so long. So it might have been an error on his behalf, but we didn't find out until just last week that this was not in the permits along with the other windows, because we did have inspections on the window. This window was also inspected just as well as the other ones. So we had no clue. It was supposed to be on there. So like Jaclyn said, what we did is we added it to this. So once we do get to that point, they can be re-inspected.
Okay.
They were already inspected, but they can re-inspect it. It'll be added into this permit.
Just to add on to respond to that one a little bit as well, we reviewed the original approved plans for the ADU after the May 18th Planning Commission meeting. We noted that, as Jessica had mentioned, all of the windows at the front facade on the first floor were shown as new on those plans. The stucco was all shown as to be removed all the way up around that window, but that window was just shown as existing. It was only noted as existing, not to be replaced. So I think it just sounds like
It was a mistake on behalf of the other architect. That's what it was.
right. It just wasn't shown as new on the plans, but all the other windows were.
We weren't looking in any way to hide anything. Obviously, it's right in front of the home.
I was just wondering,
Yeah.
I was wondering the explanation you provided that.
Yeah.
Two more questions, Mr. Chairman. You opened the door and indicated that you had gone above and beyond the call of duty, and you had put a lot of money out of pocket in connection with the interim maintenance that's been done in the last month or so. So I think it's fair for me to ask how much out of pocket?
Just not including revising the plans.
Right. No, I mean the maintenance stuff.
For the maintenance items, including the labor, it was over $4,500.
Okay.
Which, I mean, I did that because I did want to show you guys as well. You know, we are people of our word. And I mean, even though honestly, it's going to be ripped out later and it's going to be done with much nicer items there. We felt that in meanwhile, while it's during construction, we can at least make it not just leave dirt there, but to make it look even nicer.
Okay, thank you. You mentioned last time, and I'd just like to have you underscore it tonight, and that is your testimony that this is planned to be a single-family residence for you and your husband and your 5 children.
Yes.
Is that
It's
correct?
going to be for my family. It's not going to, and not being rented out for anybody. It's not going to be an apartment building.
And it's not
It
going
is
to be
for me
for,
and my 5 kids.
and it's not for an extended family that's moving from someplace to move in.
There wouldn't be any room for extended family to live there. My kids will be using all the rooms there.
And then nobody from your family, immediate family, is for the ADU. That's empty until as needed.
So as a third, that family coming to visit, my husband has an elderly mother that, you know, maybe at one point might need to stay with us. She might need help right now. God bless her. She's okay. She's doing well on her own. But it's not intended to go and rent out to a bunch of young couples to make noise and disturb anybody. No, that's not the intention for that ADU.
Thank you for your testimony.
Not a problem.
Well, don't go away yet. There may be more questions.
Chair Harrison.
What?
Chair Harrison.
Oh.
There were a couple of questions from Commissioner Mueller that I do want to address.
Oh, okay.
The first one, there are 6 bedrooms proposed in the house and 7 bathrooms as stated by Ms. Levy. 6 of those bathrooms serve each of the bedrooms, and then there's a 7th bathroom, which is appears to be a guest bathroom that's on the first floor.
I think I said 7 and 8 because I'm counting the ADU.
Right, so I'm.
That could be.
And then to get to your question about if there's a technical code limit on the number of bedrooms and bathrooms, there is none.
Thank you.
Don't go away.
I know.
Greg, do you have any questions of the owner's wife? Yes.
I don't have any questions, but I do have a comment that is a little scary because if you all haven't talked to your insurance companies, your homeowner's insurance, your hazard insurance, In some cases in our community, rates have doubled in a year, doubled. And the bigger the house, the bigger the burden. And I would just alert you to the fact that it would be wise to make sure that you're looking at all of the issues that are in a so-called high fire hazard severity zone.
That and what,
We make you do that, but at the same time, we don't make you, insure your property. And that would be something to be, I think, investigating at this point. The bigger the house, the bigger the bill. And I think that we're all in for a surprise. And wait until you see how the CAL FIRE folks use the insurance companies to enforce the implementation of fire threat mitigation. And I'm sure that, again, the house will be constructed with all the latest fire aware, technologies. But at the same time, you are next to, a very large open space that burned like crazy, as
Yeah,
you know,
I
in a
remember
Woolsey
this,
fire.
yeah.
So it's not a complaint, it's just an observation, right?
yeah, no, of course. And we're aware of all of that and whatever it takes to protect the home and protect our neighbors, obviously, whatever we need to do, we will. We're good people. We're not going to put anybody in danger in any way.
I have a number of questions for you, actually, some for the designer regarding the plans. And I'm
Do you want to come up now with
No,
me?
I still have, no, because but for you,
Sure.
can the windows have more definition than what they have right now? Can you do something to give them a little?
Well, I think that the hardy plank that we're putting up there, that's going to give it definition.
Oh,
Because
that will definitely help. Although I had to chuckle when I saw that because you chose to install it vertically, which is kind of, makes it look even bigger and more massive as opposed to
actually
horizontal.
doesn't. If you see this material on bigger homes, that actually doesn't make
Okay.
it look more
No,
massive.
but that was good to separate. But
Yeah.
so you're going to leave the windows the way they are. What about having the windows match? It's like the windows to the left of the front door, whatever direction that is, north or something.
Mhm.
I can't tell if they're going to be replaced also. And
Just to the left of the home, if you're standing in front, all the windows will be replaced in the home.
like what used to be maybe the living room or whatever, to the left of the front door, they're just looks like metal or something.
So all of the windows that were not replaced in part of the ADU are going to be replaced with the same windows. So everything will
All
be
the
matching.
windows will be the black.
Everything will be matching,
Okay,
yes.
That I couldn't tell.
Yes, everything will be matching.
Okay, and in this photo, and I saw you doing work that like right away, so that was
Yes.
good. But in the photo on upstairs, I've heard complaints about that, the open crates.
Which
That
one?
the fact that there are these open crates and people are looking at
What
open
crates?
boxes or the tops of containers. And
There's no, I don't have any containers there.
those yellow things.
You want to see it?
Sure, yeah, please.
If this was my HOA, I would be fine doing that. But is there any way you can either close those or put up some blinds or shades or something?
Oh, I thought you were talking about something in the yard. I was looking at that. Yeah, I can have that window.
Or just close them? I mean, I don't know what that is.
I can put something on that.
Oh, okay. All right. That's just because this is going to go on for a year and a half minimum. I mean, you have to mention.
That can be taken care of tomorrow. I can get those numbers tomorrow. That's no big deal. Even tonight, it's no big deal.
I talked about this and I know this may not be required per code, but can you install trellises recommended by the fire department that are fireproof? Because we're in a high fire area.
I think what my husband is installing there is going to be, I think he said he's covering it with stucco as well. I mean, it's going to be covered with a material that is fire resistant.
All right. I mean, it could be
It's
almost,
not just going to be plain wood if you.
see, if it's plain wood, that's the worst.
Yeah, no,
But
no.
if it's, even if it's vinyl, that won't catch on fire. It just melts.
Right,
but-
I think what he's gonna do is, the wood or whatever material it's gonna be there will be covered with stucco. And the stucco is not.
Right. No, that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
That's,
If I may jump in here too, because I did have a conversation with our building and safety department. Because the city is in the very high fire severity zone, the building code already has a preset standard of approved material, and it does include wood, but it's treated wood, so it's non-combustible, and it's heavy timber, so it takes much longer to burn. I spoke to the building plan checker. If someone does not use that material, they have to get something else approved specifically. So a lot of vinyl products are actually not rated for the very high fire severity zone. And a lot of the metal trellises are also not rated for the very high fire severity zone. So my suggestion is that they are required to stick to what the building code allows for. And that includes or limits them to pretty much the strictest fire severity standard or the strictest standards for fire codes.
All right. I mean, that sounds inconsistent from what I heard from Doug Kent, but whatever is the safest.
Chair Harrison, if I could,
that we need to do.
if I
Make
could
sure that it's
Okay.
done.
add on to that too. It's one of our standard conditions of approval. So condition number 12 in the resolution states that the project is located within a designated very high fire hazard severity zone, and the requirements of that chapter of our municipal code that pertain to that will be incorporated into all the plans. So that's one of our standard
All right.
conditions. And that
But as long as
should
you're
address
willing to do whatever's the safest.
We're willing to, yeah. exactly.
And that-
Do whatever it takes,
And in
so.
that regard, there's, I mean, the bark is much better than
Then the dirt, yes.
than the weeds and so forth, and the dead tree in the pot. But I believe we're not supposed to have bark next, within 5 feet of the house. So is there a way you can move
You're
that
gonna
away?
Scoop it away. from
Yeah.
me?
It's okay to have like compost or something, but or soil, but
I can have them do that.
bark
It's not a problem.
the fire people will tell you the bark could ignite too.
There's an avocado tree there, maybe
They-
up to where that is to the window. I can have them move that and put something else, soil or something.
No, I don't mind. I'm not talking about the vegetation. I'm talking about the ground that you put bark on the ground.
The bark on the,
You just sort of sweep-
mulch. The
Yeah,
mulch.
but it's not really mulch. It's like bark. It's
chips.
or chips.
Yeah, that's what the
I'm
mulch is.
sorry.
So it's like wood chips.
Okay, so the wood chips, if you could just sweep them away from the house a little bit,
Yeah, I can, that's not a big
because
deal.
apparently it burns or it can ignite.
Yeah, I can take care of that.
Okay.
I can let my husband know. That's no big deal. It's not that-
I have a question for Epi. I guess I can talk to him when he's here. Let's see. And then, and also about the solar, but this doesn't have to do with you. So I have a question about the calculations on the EIR exemption on the solar and on the plans, and I can ask other people about that. But thank you so much for cleaning this up so quickly.
Yeah, I hope that you guys like the way it looks now versus the way that it was before. We put our hearts to
it doesn't.
making it look better.
Oh, yeah, no, it doesn't look the same. Are there any questions for Ms. Lee? Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Let me know.
All right. Next we have Louise Mohammed Suai, I'm sorry.
Good evening. Good evening. I live in the area. I walk my dogs every day. So I'm several times a week I will pass by this home, and I have seen almost immediately the changes in a very good way. Like you can see on the picture, it's beautiful. For a temporary fix, it's better than some of the permanent landscape that I see in the neighborhood. It's and I totally trust those people. I mean, they are a family with kids, and I'm sure they will fit perfectly in the neighborhood where we have some older people, like I mentioned before. We have younger people, we have all kinds of people, and that makes the beauty of a neighborhood. And as long as everybody gets along and nobody's perfect, we all make mistakes at time. And we just have to be a little bit forgiving of each other and help each other out. If you see a neighbor doing something, if there's any issue, talk to the neighbor really nicely. Usually it solves the problems. That's what I try to do with my neighbors. Actually, I had someone from my household who one time picked some avocados on Mr. Levy's tree. And because of my dogs, everybody can recognize me. So he contacted me, and he was very kind about the incident. And I told him, I'm sorry, I will talk to this member of my household and it will not happen anymore. And he was very kind and very nice about it. I truly hope that the Levy family will move in our neighborhood very soon as the work is done. And I look forward to it. Please approve this plan because those people are going to be a great addition to the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a card from Bob Leah, and I don't know if anybody online is.
There's no one on.
Okay, so I have Bob Leah. How do we retreat Commissioner Leah?
To clarify, there's no one with their hands raised online.
I'm okay. So there are people online. They're just not.
Yeah, no hands are raised.
Okay, good to know. Okay, so we have Commissioner Leah.
Good evening, Commissioners. Robert Lee, a resident of Calabasas. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. And while I believe this lady believes what she says, what assurances do the community have that they will live up to those things? Couple of questions. Code enforcement. Where is the report? Where are the pictures? Residents talked about rodent problem, mosquito problems. I don't see anything. There should be a report part of the file. When the ADU was constructed, the residents were able to vacate the parking. All this new construction is post that. They should be required to provide parking for all of the rooms and the tenants that are going to be in that house. This is an apartment house masquerading as a single-family residence. There are 5 bedrooms on the second floor and 2 on the first floor, each with their own private baths. The kitchen and dining rooms are large enough to service the Los Angeles Lakers. The ADU represents yet another apartment. 8 apartments and a single-family home. This is an outrageous boarding house in what is a single-family neighborhood. The proposed addition would draw almost every house in the community. The loss of the adjacent homes, the loss of privacy for the adjacent homes is immeasurable. The community has 3 to 4 different models and mirror images thereof. This does not comport with any of them. What assurances can we give the community that this will not be turned into a boarding house once it is built? And what assurances can we give the community that the already congested parking on that street will be able to survive? If you have any questions, I'm here to answer them.
Thank you. No, I don't think anybody does anybody have any questions? No. All right. There are no hands raised, and I have no other cards. So I'm sure we all have questions. That I have certainly questions still, but so I think we can close. Should we close?
Do you want to call the designer?
Yeah, maybe. Well,
that's part of the public hearing.
Yeah, if the designer, could you come up? Because I have a lot of questions for you, actually, if that's possible. All right. The architectural review panel was concerned about the plans not being the measurements in the plans, and I was as well. And now that we have some photos of the fixed up front as it is now, looking at sheets 8 and A10 and comparing them to on Exhibit B and looking at Exhibit E, it's still way off. So I can point out a couple of the issues I have, and maybe you can tell me. One of the problems is I know that the roof in the front is being raised, but both gables on the sides are being raised quite a bit so you can get extra space in the attic, extra habitable space. But I can't tell if the apex, the top part of the roof is being raised. And the reason why that's important is on your plan on A8, it says there's 8 feet between the top of the window upstairs and the roof. And yet in reality, it's about 3 feet. So either the plans are off 5 feet or you're raising the roof.
No, we're raising the roof.
You're raising the roof?
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. So that's not in the narration at all. I had no idea that the roof was going. So the roof to me is already massive, which is why I asked, and the ARP asked for it to be split. But if you're raising the middle of the roof even 5 feet more, it's like this. Well, anyway, I'll talk later about my comments. Oh, yeah. Okay. Okay. So I didn't understand that. And also on the plans, it's showing that there's only 5 feet difference between the windows on the bottom and the window on the top. And yet in reality, it's about 6.5 feet. And also in the plans, it's showing 4.5 feet from the bottom of the bottom window in the front. And yet in reality, it's about 3 feet. So it's like these measurements aren't right. And now you're also telling me that the roof is going up in the middle. So I'm concerned about that. I think we need to be all on the same page before we make a decision, but
Where are you seeing that? On which plan are you?
so I look at A8 and I look at the photo of what's there now, because
Oh, yeah, the photos are.
or even A10, the existing. A10 existing, it also, well, it's maybe not 8 feet, but it's close to it from the top of the top window to the apex of the roof. And in reality, it's about 3 feet if you look at Exhibit B. I mean, I was out there in person. I'm just sort of eyeballing it, but these things just don't add up. So I couldn't tell what was going on. So anyway, but I think you've already answered my question. So I have, I think I have a couple of questions for Epi if he can come on. And then I have one question for the applicant, or maybe are they going to be operating their business out of the home?
Not that I understand.
No. Okay, good. So I need a couple of things explained from staff or from Epi. One is, why is there no solar? When I built an ADU, I was required to have solar, which is a good thing, by the way. I don't mind, but there is an addition here. So why is it's not just existing structure? There's a substantial addition. Oh,
That's a building code requirement. So if when they submit into plan check, our building department determines that they do trigger the need for a solar system, then they'll make them put that on the plans. That being said, our understanding is that that's only required for new residential structures. It's not a new structure. They're adding on to an existing structure.
that's not considered new, 1,833 square feet?
Not to the building code. But again, if the building code ends up requiring it, then that'll be a plan check comment and they'll have to add that into the final design.
Oh, I think that's something to review if somebody ever looks at the building code, because that doesn't make sense to me. They're adding a house and not having to put
Again, that would
solar.
be a building code requirement, is not a zoning code requirement, which is under the purview of this commission.
Right. No, I think if we ever look at the building code, I think that doesn't make sense to me. So I understand. So the other question, and I don't know if it's you or Epi, is the calculation of when you'd have to do an EIR. So as one of the letters said, if there's a 50% increase, then you have to do an EIR. And here the staff chose to add the ADU first in order to get a larger number so that it didn't trigger the EIR.
That's a mischaracterization of the legal requirement under CEQA. The CEQA guidelines has a list of exemptions.
Yes.
And within those exemptions, there are examples of what could be used as an exemption. This happens to be one of them. So the 50% threshold is one of the many exemptions that could be utilized to consider the project exempt under CEQA. If a project is not exempt under CEQA, that does not trigger an EIR, it triggers an initial study, and that initial study may end up in a negative declaration. But that being said, our analysis is that it does meet the requirement under that exemption because the exemption takes the entire structure as a whole. And the structure which exists today and existed before the ADU was constructed was around 3,700 square feet. So the proposed addition is still less than 50% of the structure that existed prior to the ADU being.
No, before the ADU was 3172 square feet, so.
No, the
50
garage was still there and the ADU converted the garage. So the actual structure, and that's how CEQA would look at it.
Oh, so CEQA includes the garage, but when you
Yes.
did the
Oh.
FAR,
I can just jump in here as well.
Oh.
Sorry.
Yes, I'm glad.
Make a point. I think staff was being over inclusive, and I think that's why I may have heard Tom about to jump in here about habitable space. So the ADU is not in front of us. So I think staff was showing you was taking an overexpansive possibly view, and for I understand their motivations, just to show you that even if we included the ADU, it would still be under the 50% of the CEQA exemption. Does that make sense?
not exactly. So if they didn't include only if the garage is counted as opposed to the ADU. If the garage is counted, then you get to the same
Yeah, and
3,700 or whatever it is, 3,769 square feet.
we would count the garage as we would analyze it's under CEQA.
Okay,
That would be consistent with how our zoning code looks at the different triggers for permit types.
but
So
for
our,
like floor area calculations, you didn't count the ADU
for floor
for some
area,
reason,
for demonstration purposes, when we look at floor area ratio,
right?
we don't include the garage because we don't have the garage square footage for other homes in the neighborhood. So we're looking at apples to apples. That's
But you also didn't include the ADU. You didn't include it as an ADU either. You included it as 5,000 square feet instead of 56. Because this house is now 56, going to be 5,600 and something. Square
Again,
feet.
in that floor area chart, that's to
Right.
compare apples and apples. Since we don't have the same numbers for all the other homes, we're only able to look at the assessor's data.
Okay.
Not include the garage.
So you use different calculations depending on the circumstances. And what do you do if people incrementally increase their homes so that until they bump into that 2,500 square foot number, they can keep on adding on and never get to the 50%?
No, we can look at it cumulatively.
That's
Right. I was just jumping here as well. Sorry, Michael. That
Oh, go ahead.
CEQA bans what's called piecemealing, or really what is like, as you kind of say, it's the salami effect. So having a little bit of slice. So as Michael was saying, it's looked at cumulatively. So I think, they couldn't be 1% under and then, slowly push the line, remove the goalpost. No goalpost.
That what they did, but that's kind of what they did here because they added the 597 square feet and then are adding another 1833.
No, let me.
No, because the
example.
ADU.
If they added, let's not consider an ADU just for purposes of a hypothetical conversation. If they added square footage if they added to the house or they built another structure on the property, then we could consider that as a cumulative change and then say that any additional square footage added on top of that could be counted towards that CEQA calculation. What I'm telling the commission here is that they did not actually physically add anything to the building envelope. The building envelope existed before, it was a garage. The garage was converted. We would have looked at that. If they had not had the ADU, we still would have counted the garage in that overall calculation.
So if they built an ADU like mine, then it would have been counted. It would have counted.
Theoretically, yeah, we could count it like that.
Because it was detached.
Because it's detached, expanding the building envelope. Here, nothing was expanded.
All right. There was something else I had to ask Epi. Oh, I know what. Epi, are you still there?
I'm still here.
Okay. So we had a comment about borders, and I believe there's a state law about borders now. So, because I've heard this on my HOA, people are now have borders, and as long as they're there for 30 days, there's nothing the HOA can do about it.
So I think there's a difference between the definition of a boarding house, which the city has the authority, first of all, which the city bans in this zone, single family residential zone, and having tenants. So, you can have a tenant possibly if they're longer than 30 days, but you can't have more than, I believe, 3 tenants, separate tenants on separate leases in your home, and that would be considered running a boarding house.
Now, just to add further clarification to that, okay, boarding house, key thing that Epi mentioned there is individual leases.
Right.
So if you're leasing out space within a house one by one to boarders, now you're running a boarding house. But if you have unrelated individuals who are cohabitating, we cannot prevent that. That's against the law. We cannot discriminate on the basis of what formulates a household.
Right, but like in my neighborhood, we have one house where a student has about 5 other students living there. It's like a frat house. Is that, that's what we call it. And they have cars all over the place on the sidewalks, everything. And we've been told that we can't do anything about it, but you're saying we can because they're all
We're
separate
not
tenants.
talking about that.
We're not talking about that, but I think Epi said if it's 3, then 3 unrelated, 3 separate leases, then.
It's separate. This is the trigger.
But other than that, they can.
Written, executed leases to individual
And
tenants.
if they don't have leases, if they just have rental agreements or something, it's the same thing, I assume. Because I don't know if all these students are going to have leases. Okay.
I don't know how a rental agreement is different than a lease.
Me neither, but I don't want to speak to this situation, which is not in front of staff at the moment. And so we're not familiar with the facts. So it's a little difficult for us.
All right. Thanks, Epi. Thank you, Tom and Michael. I don't have any other questions, but thank you.
Can I just follow up with one question?
With the heart?
Not for this gentleman.
Okay, sure. Go ahead.
I think it's really for Michael. In my math, it's not even math, it's arithmetic. If you look at the existing home, it's 3172. And the proposed addition is 1833. And that excludes the ADU, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And if my arithmetic is correct, the 1833 addition is a little over a 42% increase over the existing home, which is 3172.
No, it's more than it's
more than that?
It's 58%, but it's less than 50% of the 3769 is what he's saying, the envelope of the building.
It's less than 50% of the
3769, which is the home and the garage.
The envelope.
Yes, yes.
Correct. And I do want to remind the commission that there are other exemptions within the CEQA guidelines. So for example, an infill project is considered exempt under CEQA. Jaclyn added the additional exemptions into the resolution. So CEQA, you can identify more than one exemption. And
we're bringing this up because this came up in a comment in a letter. And
I've provided the answer
right.
and confirmed that we can still rely on other exemptions.
So I see. I need to subtract, not add. So it's really, if you did your math correctly,
I did.
It's really a what? About a 58%?
50. If you base it only on the 3172,
Correct.
it's 58. It's 58%.
Because I'm not talking about CEQA now. I'm talking about the actual size. I'm not worried about CEQA.
Yes.
I'm looking at the addition relative to the existing home.
Yes.
And that's a 58% increase.
Yes.
Thank you.
Because it's going up to 5,600
square feet. You multiply 1833 times 2.
Yeah.
It's more than right.
Yes.
Thank you. Got it.
But I think we've gotten the answers. Any other comments or questions?
I have some comments about maybe language in the exhibits in the resolution, but I don't know if this is the time.
Sure, let's
bring your microphone.
Yeah, sure.
You want to talk about things that I thought we should change as far as wording goes?
Oh, sure, absolutely.
That's all I have.
You need to close
questions.
Oh, did I? If I didn't close the public hearing, I guess it's closed now. There's no more hands up, right? I mean, there are no hands. And I have no other speaker card. Oh, I do have one. I'm so sorry.
Right?
Yes, I'm sorry. One more speaker and then we'll close. It's Avi Eliav. Is it Eliav?
Eliav, yes.
From Woodland Hills.
Yes. I'm in front of the family. I spoke last time. I just want to address what the gentleman that was here talking about boarding house. This family have 5 kids and they live in 3-bedroom house right now. You cannot, this gentleman is talking about boarding house. What is he even talking about? How can we know that he doesn't do any boarding in his house? Do you understand? It doesn't make sense. This family, and the reason I'm speaking, I wasn't about to speak. I'm just here to support, but this gentleman upset me with the accusation that are far-fetched. Nobody even come close to what this gentleman is proposing, that it's a boarding house, that all the cars. I don't understand. This family just want to move to Calabasas. And it's a good district for their school, for their kids. and there are 5 kids, and they live right now in a 3-bedroom house, and it's just not enough. And I can see when I go over there, it just, and the only thing they want their child have a bedroom and have a bathroom. And they, you know what, when you guys asked for those things a month ago, they jumped on it right away just to get approved, just to get past this and start what they need to do to start, because they need to move out of that where they are right now. So I would urge the panel to consider that it's preventing a family from moving to a bigger house for their family. That's all I'm asking. And they did really what they did in the house. They jumped on it right away and they fixed everything like you guys requested. And it cost them a lot of money. I was astounded how much it cost them and how much he was willing to spend. And I told him, you're doing too much. You just need to, he said, no, I want to do above so they can see that I'm sincere. So that's what he did. And I supported what he did eventually, but I just want to put my 2 cents in. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Avi. Anybody? All right.
You're the chair.
Yes, go ahead.
I just only wanted to mention, because Mr. Lee had mentioned that there's only 3 designs for the homes in that area, which if you look at the home, if you guys remember the home to the left of me, that big house, looks nothing like any of the homes in the area. And then on the street to the right on Enbridge behind me, there are 2 or 3 other homes over there that look completely different. There's one home over there. If you drive by, you get the chance on Enbridge when you first get in there. On the right-hand side, the whole house is completely covered with tile, with like a brownish colored tile. And then there's a house across the street from it that made it look like a castle, like these different pointy things in the front. So my house is not the house that we want to do. Is I think looks much more like the other original homes in the area than the other 3 that I've seen in the area. Mine is keeping a very similar look. That's the only thing I wanted to add.
Okay, thank you. I think you're just saying there is variety, and there certainly is the one next door. I'm sorry, Greg, you now I can close the public hearing.
Yeah, I was going to suggest that you close the public hearing. There are still no hands raised online.
All right, so it's closed, and you have some, or maybe I can ask staff, can you verify that the apex of the roof is going up and how far?
Actually, I'm looking at the plans right now. I'm not sure what you're considering the apex, but the ridge of the roof.
The point.
So that's actually staying the same.
That's what I thought.
What's going up is on either side.
On the gables, right?
Yeah.
So
those are being raised about.
That's what I thought. I thought that wasn't going up, but the measurements are all off on the plan.
They're actually not. I've been measuring it as we've been speaking. I would actually say it's an optical illusion because it's going up on the sides. It makes it look like the distance between the top and then that window is greater, but it's actually coming out to the same.
But okay. It looks like 3 feet from the top of the top window to the apex. And yet it's because on the plans, it looks like 6
because
or 8 feet.
Right now on the plans or on the existing, the steepness of that roof makes it looks like the sides are so much closer, or the roof is so much closer to the sides of that window. As they raise it, it actually increases that.
Oh, definitely. But I was talking about the middle of the window.
Yeah, I'm measuring it on the plans. It's exactly the same distance on both the existing and the proposed elevation.
Well, what I'm saying is the photograph is not the same as what he has on 8 or 10. So the existing one is incorrect and the sheet on 10 is incorrect. Both of them are incorrect. So if you just look at the photograph, you'll see that it's off. And
I'm not going to rely on a photograph.
But the photograph is what's showing what's there now. And this is accurate. What's not accurate is what's showing in the present sheet, and what's not accurate are the plans. And I don't know how you can operate from inaccurate plans.
The problem with relying on a photograph in this setting is that the photograph is taken at an angle. It's not directly looking.
No, I was there, Michael. I saw it. This is not accurate. The ARP raised the same issue. It's not accurate. The A10 and A8. I'm not sure that makes much of a difference. Hopefully you guys will get it done right. but it's not accurate. That's all. So it's,
Can I ask a quick
Yeah.
question?
sure.
Michael, are you talking, if you have the A13?
No, it's A10 and
I know,
A.
but I just wanted him to look at, because that has the proposed and the existing. A13?
So, well, he's saying that the apex, the point hasn't changed. So
Yeah,
that's
and the
good.
ridge and what it's called, the top of the ridge,
Yeah,
Yes. And
that
that's good.
line, that stays the same, correct?
that stays the same.
And
It's
that's
26
good,
feet, 10
because I
inches.
got testimony saying differently, but that's good.
And the point at the top of the, I guess it's bedroom 4. It's,
Yeah, it's the same height. It's 26. feet, 10
that
inches.
point is the same height.
Yeah, and that's significant to me, because when I heard that it was being
Yeah.
raised, that.
Yeah, I think the question was misunderstood, but on the sides of.
Yeah,
Oh, I said that last time. The
That's
side,
what I got.
I know the roof's being raised on the sides allows more habitable space.
got it.
And that I understand. It's the point. I didn't want it to go up.
Yeah, if you look on that page, on the cross section,
Right,
Okay,
both the existing and the proposed are listed at 26 feet, 10 inches.
right.
all right. So does the designer agree with that now? I mean, is that okay? It's not going to be raised in the middle? The overall height, the maximum height will not be raised? Is that correct? Good. So the rest of it is just inaccurate, and I hope you can monitor it. The placement of the windows, I mean, they are where they are, you know, and the plans just aren't quite right. That's all. They're off a few feet, but a few feet on the windows. It's
Yeah,
not.
when it moves into building and safety plan check, at that point, an engineer has to prepare the plans, and it's prepared at a much greater level of detail. This is still an architectural set in front of the planning commission.
Oh, I see. But this isn't as significant to me as the one in Westridge, where when it was 4 feet off, it actually impacted the driveway. This is just where the windows are located. And they're off. That's okay. Anyway, I'm sorry. Greg, you had some wording that you wanted to address.
Do you want to close the public hearing? Are we closed?
Yes, yes.
Okay, I mean, this is kind of an unfortunate situation. I know that every neighborhood's got a property that is a blight and that the neighbors are unhappy about. And yeah, you got a good deal on the property, but then you buy the reputation of the property, and now you have to deal with all the backlash associated with that in the neighborhood. So, you know, showing good faith and being good neighbors and trying to clean up the front yard is a good start, but you know, you're probably going to have an uphill battle here with your neighbors, and it's not entirely your fault, but some of this is on you now. You're the owner now. So the history of the property, you inherit the history, and that's kind of a problem. I'd like to just clear up some language starting in Exhibit A on page 7. In the condition.
Doing the resolution.
Yeah, resolution, page 7.
And there was an
Conditions
updated
of
resolution,
approval.
right? Jaclyn, there's an updated resolution.
Yeah,
Yes.
that would,
That's the one that's in
yeah,
front of you
that's this
tonight.
one, I believe.
Which one is it? How did it does
Exhibit
it?
A
Yeah, Exhibit A.
in today's packet.
Yeah,
Right.
but I have. Okay.
So, I think adding to the first condition, the proposed project shall be built in compliance with the approved plans on file. I think we should also add that the maintenance agreement or Exhibit C shall be fully complied with for the duration of construction. I'd like to see that language added into.
I do have Commissioner Byrne, if you'll turn to page 9 of the resolution, there is a condition that was added that says, yes, condition number 16, the proposed project shall comply with the interim maintenance plan dated May 11th for all areas of the property not within the construction area. We can definitely amend that condition to mention for the duration of
I
the
would say
construction
for the
process.
duration of construction, I think that's probably a good thing to add there.
Good. Is that agreed with everybody? Is that for everybody? Okay.
Can I also suggest looking at condition 2, if the commission wants, so on condition 2, it requires the project conditions to be imprinted on the title sheet of the construction plans. That would basically be pages 7 through the end of the resolution. We can add that the interior maintenance plan also be imprinted on the construction drawings.
That's a good
I
idea.
like that.
So just so we make sure we document this correctly, we're talking about making that an amendment to condition number 2 on page 7.
Yeah, adding that the interior maintenance plan will also be imprinted on the title page of the construction plans.
Here's the rest. Any other language?
Yeah, one other addition to exhibit, which is now exhibit C, indemnification agreement under number 2, conditions of approval.
Wait, I'm sorry. Exhibit C is the maintenance plan. So
No, there's 2 exhibit Cs. One is the maintenance plan and one is actually some conditions of approval. At least that's what
You're talking about the indemnification agreement?
Yes.
Well, that's part of the resolution.
yes,
Page
that's
6 of
the
the resolution.
resolution. Yes.
What's the page on that?
Page 6. Okay.
Oh, okay.
I finally got the new one. Okay.
What's the language?
So let me see here. Okay, so the proposed project shall be built in compliance with the approved plans on file with the planning division. That was one of the first items. And I would say, and the project narrative and timeline contained in Exhibit Z, or Exhibit D, I'm sorry, once the permits are issued. So adding to that, and the project narrative and timeline contained in Exhibit D, excuse me, once permits are issued. I'm not concerned as much about the time it takes to get them permits. I'm more wanting to make sure that this thing gets built. Once you have your permits, it gets built in a timely fashion. I know there's some concerns about that. So is there some language that we can add to help with that? And you can maybe any significant deviations from the construction schedule should be reported to and be approved by the community development director, something like that.
You mean you want to bring it back here?
No,
Community development director. In other words, if there's going to be significant delays in the construction, that should be something that you're aware of and that you are involved with. And
Mr. Chairman, can I ask Commissioner Byrne a question? Are you worried about how best to monitor the progress?
I'm worried about the thing dragging on forever.
I understand, but I mean, there could be an act of God, an earthquake, which slows things down.
So they're all things at the discretion of the community development director that can be dealt with internally, but having something to ensure that this thing's going to get done in a timely fashion as best we can.
So I would suggest, rather than appending or incorporating the narrative, because there's a lot of detail in that, we could put a condition that requires the applicant to update the development department on its progress on a quarterly basis, every 2-month basis, some number. So they're required to actually pick up the phone or write a report or communicate the progress.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do want to
like that.
I want to caution, I want to caution the commission dictating a specific timeline because there are many reasons why a project may get delayed, and it would be unprecedented for this commission.
And I'm not suggesting that.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting a hard timeline.
Just a progress report to the planning department. I'd say quarterly. On the progress. Where is it on permitting? If construction started, are they 20% done? Are they 30% done? Because I agree with Commissioner Byrne that there's a history here, and feet are going to have to be held to the fire. And
it's not necessarily pre-construction. It's more once the permits are issued and they're ready to build. That's when there should be some accountability with respect to the construction schedule.
There are remedies within the building code and the city's administrative process. So we do have remedies within there so that if construction drags on and they're not calling for timely inspections, then they're at risk of either getting a fine or having their building permit revoked and then having to pay more money to re-invoke it. So, there are remedies within that process.
What about the interim maintenance plan?
That's being incorporated as part of the conditions.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if that's not followed, that's okay.
I mean, I agree with Mr. Klein generally, that one can avail oneself of remedies, but that requires the city to start the remedy.
Right.
Where here, I think what Commissioner Byrne is saying, let's put the burden on the applicant to update the city on progress. I don't think, if we just have a condition that says the applicant shall, on a quarterly basis, beginning with permit issuance.
Once permits are issued.
With
Yeah.
permit issuance, whatever technical term you want, on a quarterly basis, shall report in writing to the department as to the progress.
Yeah, I like that. That's the intent of what I'm looking for.
Good. I think we're all in agreement to something like that.
We'll find a condition to attach that to.
Okay.
That makes sense.
And was the language on that just to be submitted to staff or to the building department, to the director?
I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's where it should go.
Yeah.
To the director.
Yeah. That's all I have.
And in writing, and it can be up to the applicant if it's 1 page or 5, they're the ones reporting the progress.
And
So we don't want to
just to be clear, in my mind anyway, it should be to the director. The director obviously is over all divisions of the department, which includes building and safety. And so by going to the director, automatically then the director can share it with the building official and we have the coordination that is required.
Yeah.
And I assume the public can call the community development director, say, hey, what's going on here? And he'll have that information. Okay.
That's common occurrence.
But I imagine in this case with the history here, I mean, 3 years of, no maintenance, basically, it's anyway.
Yeah, that's the only reason I'm really pushing for this. So let's give some of the residents some reassurance that this is going to get done in a reasonably timely fashion. That's all.
Was that it?
That's it for me.
If I can just piggyback on what Greg is saying. I live next door to a place that has been demolished. And if you want to see what happens to a property over time, when you have a rain like we had, the home is gone. The receiver is responsible for maintaining the property. I had to call the receiver, and I still haven't heard back from him yet, as to what they're going to do about the weeds that have invaded the whole neighborhood from that piece of property. So what Greg is suggesting in terms of a timeline is not the problem of this operator, developer and family, but we're going to be facing a lot of this kind of stuff because everybody wants to live in Calabasas and they're looking for deals, and they're looking to make sure that what they invest in the property also, when they're empty nesters, is a return ultimately as well, because that's about the only real estate is about the only investment you can count on these days, and even not that very much. And so all you have to do is look at any of the development proposals that are going on in our city as we speak. So our brand is good and everybody wants to live here, and it's good actually to work with people who want to invest in the community and in their families and their neighborhood. And I think we're coming in on the tail end of an unresolved situation with this particular piece of property. But with the laws that the state of California has passed, and SB 9 and 10 and all the other follow-on that's going to go on, we've just begun to understand the impact that's going to happen. And there's going to be a lot of this stuff going on here at this commission and with the staff. I can tell you that I have great faith in our staff, legal and administrative and planning and in code enforcement, everything else. And the fact that we've made this almost a case study, because we're minus a commissioner who is next door or right near the property, because the circumstances are important to everybody that's involved. And as we look to solve the problem in California and the country, to house the people and properly and well and creatively and fairly and equitably, all those things that we talk about, we still have to count on what the general plan of Calabasas, which was created in 2006, Go to the city of LA, their last general plan update was 1946.
Really?
Think about that. They do specific plans. I mean, the Warner Center plan, the Rams are buying, Westfield, and, they're going to make changes up there. I mean, who knows? I don't want that coming to my planning commission, but, there are going to be people here who say, hey, let them fight it out. And I'll go to the Rams games, it'll be fun. And I'm going to be in Calabasas because it's well run and it's disciplined and we care. And I think that if this applicant has learned anything from this proceeding so far, is that we care a lot. And that is the reason you want to live here, is because you care, so do we. So I think as we wrestle with the language, I think a quarterly report would be helpful. And I think monitoring the kind of things that go on in our community, including the weeds next door to me, that kind of thing needs to be anticipated as we are doing our general plan now. And we just passed the housing element because we got our public safety element and our circulation element approved in Sacramento. And they were holding us hostage in that regard as well. And nobody on staff is complaining about that. They're just saying, wow, look what we have to come up with right now. And Greg has to come up with the language. Let's make sure that we pay attention to the timing. So I don't know whether the lot next to me is going to ever be sold or whatever, but someone could literally come into that piece of property. It's a 1/3 acre. They could build, it's subdividable by SB 9 and 10 to 2 properties. And then they could, am I wrong or right?
Well, I would actually refrain from talking about any potential project that may be coming in front of the commission. Keeping in mind that any new home does require.
Well, I know we need to keep on the agenda.
That's the ghost of Effie talking over there.
It's a big picture. It's not just a street or a lot or a neighborhood. This city and its staff is coping with a lot. And so are the home builders and the people who want to live in this place. So I think the solving of the problem by putting, an inspection report more or less, that would be helpful to the director of planning and development to keep track amongst all the other things we're going to have to face with all the energy and emotion we put into this particular project. And we're going to have to deal with all the neighbors on Dantes View and everywhere else over there. Because there will be potentially appeals to the decision that we make tonight. Right. I think we've done a good job in coming up with the issues. We may have gone a little overboard on some of them, and my conversation with you right now is part of that. But I think it's important for us to think about what do we want for the next 20 years, which is what we're looking to develop our new general plan. And what, Michael, can you tell me what we think we're going to try to accomplish in a general plan completion date?
I don't want to divert the conversation right now to something else. I think we should stick with the matter at hand, which is the site review.
A housing element, public safety element, and a circulation element. We have 5 other elements to come up with, right?
The housing element is required to be updated every 8 years, and we'll look at what we need to evaluate. But again, I think we should just get back to this item that's at hand.
The one thing that isn't really subscribed to is a vision element. What do we want? That's the problem, and that's why we spent so much time with this project, and why
there's a community design element.
It's going to be a tough go from this point forward. But I think the staff has done a great job. The applicant has been willing and I think collaborative in trying to get to a best solution here. So at this point, we don't have any more public comment. I have no more questions or comments other than that big picture stuff.
No, I don't have anything. I think the problem is that this wasn't maintained for 3 years and there's the problem with the neighbors, but it looks like it'll turn around now, I hope. So
you see it and then you got to fix it and do something. What do we want?
So does anybody want to make a motion or
no,
or we're not there yet?
no.
You have questions?
I don't have any additional questions. I just hope that the staff will watch those, where the windows on the plan, just make sure that the plans are accurate representations of what are there, what's there now. But as long as the roof isn't going higher in the middle, that's good.
Well, let me ask our attorney in that case, is there anything else that we need to deal with at the commissioner level? Or do we need to move to approve or deny the resolution that's before us?
I think it's appropriate if the commission wants to vote on the resolution, just want to clarify. I think the commission understands there's only approval for resolution in front of us. So if the resolution doesn't, if there's a motion to consider it and it doesn't pass, then we can discuss options going forward from there.
All right, is there a motion at all, considering the changes that we've made as well?
I motion to approve. I motion to approve with the changes we
You
discussed.
move to approve.
I move to.
That's right, he's going to correct the minutes again, so it's,
Yeah, you make a motion, but you move. So, I'll second the motion.
any other discussion?
Well, that's where we should go. Is there any other resistance to making an approval on this resolution?
I'll wait to vote, but I do have a comment. And that is, and I could go on ad nauseum about the history, and I don't think that's necessary. I think we've gone through that. My biggest problem with this legally, from a quasi judicial perspective, is the size. Is this 58% increase consistent aesthetically with the neighborhood? That's a big jump. This is a mansionization of this street. That said, if you look at the chart that Jaclyn has so carefully prepared, the proposal meets all of the standards. It meets the FAR, and it grandfathers in on the setback issue, but otherwise it meets everything. And I've sort of been, I think this one is on the cusp. I know there's one other house that's sort of this big, but otherwise this is really going to be the big one in the street. I drove around the neighborhood. It's amazingly eclectic. I mean, there may be 3 base models, but there are some big homes in there, not on this street, but on other streets. I can tell there are some really big homes and really well maintained. It's a beautiful neighborhood in most respects. Some of the neighbors have let the weeds take over, but that's true all through Calabasas. So I think this one is right on the cusp in terms of the size. That's what really troubles me the most about this. I've always hesitated to say that I love a project or I don't like a project, because for me, other commissioners say what they want, but I've always hesitated to do that because it's really, in my view, not my job to like or dislike a project. My job is to ask, is it conforming with the law and the regulations? And I come to the conclusion, almost not happily, that it is in compliance. I'm just not crazy about the size, but I'm not prepared, given that it's consistent with the other regulations, to say you got to lop off 500 square feet or you don't get my vote. I just don't feel comfortable doing that. So with some reluctance, I'm going to support the motion, and that's where I stand.
So I if I could say something, I don't remember what the standard was. It wasn't just that it had to meet all those size requirements. Isn't our task to find that it's compatible with the neighborhood because it's an increase of X number of square feet?
Finding number 2.
Right.
If you look at resolution 2,
What is it? Number 2? It was something because it was over a certain number of square feet, it had to be compatible.
No, finding
No,
out.
we have no objective standard from that standpoint. That would otherwise be a floor area ratio requirement, which does not apply to the residential zoning district.
right? It unfortunately is a confusing thing that staff, we will use a floor area ratio calculation as a tool as one of many things to look at how one property compares to other properties in terms of size, bulk, if you will. But floor area ratio is a standard applied to commercial buildings and not to single family homes, at least in this community. So we don't actually have a floor area ratio standard in the code. So to use that as a definitive objective standard, we can't do that. But the ARP and whether they recommend approval is something that's documented. And so that's shown as one of the bases for the finding support that you see in the paragraph under number 2.
I would just jump in. The city does have factors. I'm not going to comment on whether they're objective or not, but they're not numeric, is what I'd say. That's it.
But wasn't there a factor, something that had to be compatible with the neighborhood when it's an increase of a certain amount of size?
No.
No, I don't believe so.
Okay, good.
It has to be probably divisible by
So it's Tom.
We're just going 2 hours. Let's make this crisp.
Oh, we're on. We're back. We're back. All right.
Okay.
So now we're going to new business, item 3. And this is a review of the 2023-2024 capital improvement program for consistency with the general plan. And after, I guess, staff makes
The general plan of 2006-8,
2006.
2008. That's when the general plan was done.
Oh, boy. Okay. But after staff's presentation, I mean, I'll ask all the commissioners to pull whatever items they wish and ask questions or discussion, and then we can vote on those before we vote on the consistency of the entire capital improvement program. So with that, I think is it Tom?
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is.
And again, Tom, would you eat the mic for me, please? So I can hear you.
I just clicked on it.
And by the way, I have no cards on this, right?
Okay. I
Okay,
had to
okay.
hit a different button. You didn't tell me that part. All right. So we're reviewing the CIP this year, as we do every year, ahead of the council's consideration of the annual budget. And in this case, it's a 5-year plan, as it was last year. And if you'll remember, when I brought it to you last year, that was the first time this commission looked at a 5-year CIP, because the CIP in previous years had been a 2-year CIP. So this 5-year CIP shouldn't be anything totally new, because we explained that last year. It does matter in the standpoint that when you do 5-year capital improvement programs, then you will have items that are multiple year improvement items. And so you'll see a lot of things. In fact, most of the things in the list were in last year's, because they were shown as things to be taken on in year 2 of the 5-year CIP, or years 2 and 3, or whatever. So most of these you've already reviewed and deemed conformant to the general plan last year. Okay, so I want to start with that. This isn't doing a page down. Okay. So without going into the details of this language, the bottom line here is that a review of a capital improvement program relative to a general plan and the policies in that plan is required under state law. And the fundamental purpose for that is that cities and counties are supposed to conduct themselves in accordance with their overall plans that they develop with the input from their communities, and that they adopt as their set of policies for future development and how they operate. Rather than, for example, with a new leadership suddenly deciding they're going to build a road where one had never been imagined before, to take a rather absurd example, but that's the point. So it's an integral part of the city's budget. The CIP that is summarized for the commission for this meeting includes projects that are under the direction of Public Works, Community Services, Administration, Communication, Finance, and the Landscape and Lighting Maintenance District, or districts plural. There are several. As I mentioned, most of the items that are in there, and the details of which are in the written report, I'm not going to replicate that in the PowerPoint, but most of them already have been reviewed by this commission because they were in last year's CIP as well, and they're carrying forward in the current CIP. And everything on this page, for example, which are public works projects, fall into that category. So I'm not going to go through all these, but any questions you raise about an individual project, we'll do our best to answer. We do have Tatiana Holden here, who is our interim director of public works, or acting. Is that right? So she can answer any questions about public works.
Before you go on, Michael.
Yes.
You know, I have actually a lot of things I want to talk about regarding the CIP capital improvement budget. And also our, I guess our planning and direction, kind of like my last little polemic about we need to have a vision element of our plan. Well, this is pretty much what it is. And as Tom just said, a lot of this is already underway. And if you haven't seen some of the really great work, you know, this city and this staff and these people and our contractors have done a really great job with all of our streets and so forth. So we're talking about essentially the next 4 years, are we not, Tom?
It's from the current fiscal year and the next 5 years. It's for 5 fiscal years. And I went back to the slide I had on just to point out one thing in particular. We don't have necessarily all things that the city's completed in the last year, but I do have the Old Town sidewalks and street lighting because it does show up in terms of the documents of the current CIP. And I'm guessing that's because there's maybe 1 or 2 little niggly things they're still having to hammer out to finish it. But it is a completed project. So I noted that at the top of that list. You can go walk around Old Town and you'll see the great work that was done. And that was something that was presented to this commission as part of last year's CIP. So the whole point, of course, is that whatever's listed here is a planned project. You'll end up seeing in bricks and mortar at a future date, of course. So in terms of new items to this CIP that were not included in last year's list, they've got in public works, some maintenance trucks that'll be purchased. That's an itemized capital improvement item. They have interior lighting replacements that are listed as a CIP item, and Civic Center, the buildings here that make up the complex will be repainted. In terms of community services, our parks department, as it were, the list here represents projects that were shared with this commission a year ago and were deemed consistent with the general plan at that time. They're carrying over into this fiscal, this next 5-year cycle CIP. New to this one, not previously included in last year's CIP, is a number of things for the tennis and swim center. Improvements to the indoor health center facilities, as well as the outdoor areas. Those are the first 2 bullets. They're going to refurbish the pool as well as the deck surrounding the pool. By the way, the individual years, singular or multiple in terms of fiscal years when those are envisioned to be accomplished are noted on these. So the pool and deck refurbishment is the upcoming fiscal year, for example, 2023-24.
And that's July 1st, right?
It starts July 1. So the fiscal years are July 1 through June 30. Good question. So also in the tennis and swim, they have some general facility upgrades planned, which is basically equipment. All of the, for example, and flooring for some of the workout areas and things like that. They've got a roof repair. That's the bullet on the right at the top. Kitchen appliances they have to replace. So an awful lot that's outlined for that facility alone. They also have identified heating, ventilation, and air conditioning system replacements, and that's something they are anticipating over several fiscal years within the 5-year CIP and at 4 different park properties. Senior Center, there's a shade structure that they plan to put up on the south and or west side of the building, and then the monument signs would be installed for the city parks. That's also on the list. All of these, again, as I mentioned, were not in last year's and they're new this year. For administration, finance, and communications, I've lumped these all together just for sake of brevity. These are all items that have been in the system before, except for the workstation phone system replacement. That's a new item for this year's CIP.
Tom, can I ask you a quick question about the Civic Center furniture? Are we talking about inside or outside?
That's the outside. Well, it may be both, but I remember it being primarily the outside. Michael may know more.
I believe you're right. I believe it would be outside, mostly outside.
Right. The outdoor furniture is what I've been informed of before, but the write-up that was provided to me for purposes of this presentation didn't specify, but I understand from discussions with staff, that's what it's targeting.
I asked the question because all those chairs we went to New York to decide what they should be like and how they should last. And they actually look pretty good still. And the furniture is that and everything that's, upstairs and downstairs and in the library as well. And I think it's holding up pretty well, but that was the reason for the question. When we say Civic Center furniture replacement, not now, but later, I'd like to chat about that.
I would like to touch that. Yeah, it's definitely, if you look at page 3 on this list, it says the outside Civic Center Plaza furniture replacement for 100.
So the teeth.
For $100,000. Anyway, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
Then we have lighting landscape maintenance district items, which is the one item listed for that is turf replacement, which is, they call it turf replacement, but it's basically drought tolerant plantings to be installed to replace turf and other things that are high water consumption plantings so that we can obviously be better with water conservation. So again, not to replicate everything that's stated in a written staff report, I just wanted to summarize that there are a number of projects that are new. I just quickly summarized which ones are new and glossed over the ones that are duplicative of last year. And if you have questions about specific projects, we'll do our best to answer them. We've got expertise from Public Works in the room. I don't know if somebody from Parks and Rec was, okay, they're not available. If we can't answer something about a parks project, that may have to wait, but we've done the analysis at staff level that is shown as an exhibit A to the written staff report. And that exhibit shows the individual listings of projects. It identifies them with a detailed description to the best that I could do if it was provided to me by the departments. It details the fiscal years that are involved. It identifies specific elements of our general plan where policies are found that are applicable, and then it lists the policy numbers that were found to be applicable. And then later in that same exhibit, starting on page, let's see here. On page 8 of the 10-page exhibit is the summary. Actually, there's a detailed list of each. It's word for word of the policy statements from the general plan, but it lists by the policy numbers in the left-hand column and the policy statements in the main right-hand column, every policy that is cited in the previous part of that exhibit. So you can actually find out what exact policy supports any one of those CIP items or multiple policies, as is sometimes the case.
All right, good. Thank you.
Again, I just want to emphasize that the purpose of the conversation and the action of the commission tonight is to ensure that the items that are listed in the capital improvement program are consistent with the general plan. Not really a question of whether we should do it or whether we shouldn't do it. That's really a policy decision by the city council. As an easy example, one of the items on here is to upgrade the lighting in the library from whatever it is now to LED. It's not whether we should do that. Is there consistency with our general plan? If our general plan said that we don't want efficient lighting, then we wouldn't, recommend that moving on. But since there are policies in our general plan that encourage energy efficiency, then it's easy to make that recommendation.
Yeah,
Do we have the money for that, Michael?
That's not really the purview of the commission here. That would be up to the council.
Right.
I'm only asking because the lighting and the software and the media and the phones, all that came out to $1.65 million. And it just
whatever dollar
a lot of
amount
money
is,
for.
the dollar amounts are not up for consideration by
Okay.
this commission. You don't have a budgetary responsibility.
All right. It's just consistency with the general plan.
Yeah, I'm just wondering why you're giving us this then, because it creates a lot of potential issues and heartburn. So maybe it's best we didn't see this.
Well, the reason is what I tried to synopsize with a hypothetical, which is to make sure that nothing that is in here is proposing to do something that is wildly inconsistent with the general plan, such as a street where none was ever envisioned through the circulation element, for example, or if it says we're going to put a roundabout in the middle of the intersection of Parkway Calabasas and Calabasas Road. If this said that was going to happen, but the general plan had a policy that says no roundabouts, well, then that would be an inconsistency, you see, as an example. So the whole point is just to say, is there something on this list that is inconsistent with policies of the general plan? Yes or no?
All right.
Our analysis is there are no reasons to say that any of these are inconsistent with the general plan. It has nothing to do with what they cost. It has nothing to do with which year or years they'll be implemented.
I mean, may I say something?
Sure.
I mean, I think you
And
were,
we'll pull.
you were strongly hinting at this, Tom, if not saying it explicitly. Don't waste a lot of time on the projects that we have already found consistent with the elements last year. I mean, got a whole list. He's got some stuff that on these lists that say new, and that's what we should focus on because we've already done this drill and I don't need to reinvent the wheel. But as to the new ones, my question is, okay, we can make a consistency determination, which I don't think is frankly very difficult. I mean, I've done this 1,000 times up here. But what we can't do, or correct me if I'm wrong, is we can't amend the project, make it different. So for example, let me just give you an example, my pet peeve. You've got the turf landscape replacement with drought tolerant plantings. You have a chart here which says the section of the general plan that is consistent with. I've looked at it. I could sign off on that right now. I couldn't amend this and say, can we squeeze in here the words preference for California natives? Because it's already in the program.
I mean, you bring up a great point. Surely, I mean, we've got great minds here and people with those great minds come up with great ideas. So I'm sure every one of you has some ideas of how any one of these projects or many of them might be improved or enhanced in some way. And those would not be for consideration by you and your fellow commissioners in this setting and for this purpose. If you want to share those kinds of ideas with a council member for them to consider as the budget inclusive of the CIP goes forward, sure, do that. I would suggest you might first go to whoever the department director is with those ideas before talking to a council member, but
Fair
it
enough.
wouldn't be for here.
Okay.
Yeah, to confirm, this is not the venue for that, but the budgeting process is a public process. So the budget, including the CIP list that you see here, is going to be discussed by the council in a future meeting. I believe the next meeting is May 31st. So that would be a good time to submit recommendations.
Okay, thank you.
So with that,
May I comment on the thing?
oh, you can, yeah, we can all pull items and discuss them. So go ahead.
But if you're going to speak, that's okay.
No, go ahead.
Well, an example of what I would say is not inconsistent with the general plan of 2006, 2008. But as we have learned, a lot of folks have been dealing with ADA compliance issues in many cities and much housing and so forth. And just try to get in this council chamber door sometimes if you're in a wheelchair or on a walker. Those are really hard doors to get in. And if you go to the back of the library, you know, those doors, they don't open automatically. And that's not in the budget. What's in the budget for the library is lighting, LED, which is also conforming to the general plan, which is, you know, save energy, you know, update the technology and so forth. And this room, you know, we're hoping that we're going to get new camera equipment in here or new video recording and presentation materials, because this stuff is from the original, you know, 2008 installation. And that's the same thing in the Founders Hall and the library. And so there are issues there that it takes a village, right? Everybody should put their 2 bits in, even though we're not saying it's inconsistent with the general plan. But if this is our only time that we get to actually say, let's finish the job on ADA compliance here, that would be nice to have these doors, work automatically, and it's probably not in the budget yet. It could be, and that's not an issue of consistency so much as what's the discretion that, the planning body and the council ultimately making the decision has in order to deal with those needs that are now. We have doors that open at the senior center and in the front of the library. And the doors at the entrance to City Hall work occasionally, and they probably need an overhaul as well. So that's where I'm coming from on some of this stuff. There are opportunities that each of us observes that should be into the budget discussions and ultimately budget decisions that the staff and the council ultimately make.
Do you have any other items that you want?
I do, actually. But those are, I think, worthwhile. The library doors, the City Hall doors, for ADA compliance would be a good investment and consistent with the general plan. So I'm not opposing any of that, obviously. I'm just saying that now's the time to talk about it. And ditto with the communications in City Hall. I think we're still on AT&T, are we not?
I don't know what our communication system is.
Well, Spectrum should be, because they're the cable provider here, and they should be providing, broadband communications technology so that we don't have to, short circuit our decisions on making video presentations to the planet. So it's I think worthy to take a look at that. Again, none of these are criticism. It's just saying, if we have a chance to do it in a way that is going to be beneficial, because that's what the general plan was asking for in 06 to 08, is can we now have almost a continuous improvement program going on in our community? I would say that for the software systems that we have on page 203 of 218 in the budget, this is the new financial software. It's more than that, obviously. It's all the software, but the artificial intelligence world has just turned everything upside down. And I would say that if we have already considered it, that's a good thing. But if our general plan of 2008 didn't know about Chat GPT, the general plan of 2035 or whatever that we're working on now should be, aspirational, and look to do that while we have the opportunity to make these dollars go farther and more effectively. Solar at the CTSC, the Tennis Swim Center.
I think they have that solar heating, don't they?
Well, it's hot water heaters. It's not really solar heating, but we need to replace the roof. Well, should we be thinking about also the consistency of energy conservation and effectiveness and efficiency, and look at not just the roof, but then the solar system necessary to heat the pool. And again, it's not a complaint. I'm just saying, since we're being asked to, conform this to what our general plan consistency is, good idea to take a look. And the other pre-planting is something that we are aggressively doing, but it's pretty hard to stay ahead of the, pine borer beetles and the, oak beetles and everything else. And we're losing trees. And we know that that's the case, and it's really expensive to treat the trees to save them. There should be probably a tree planting or a tree replacement program as a part of our budget in order to say, our first ordinance was protecting the oak trees of Calabasas in 1991. Second ordinance was the scenic corridor, which is, we love looking at our trees and our native habitats. So if we are dealing with tree planting, it might be just good to anticipate what the drought has done to us and the borers, and not the boring. I know I'm that, so that's another story. The fire damage that we've all suffered. And also, we've had a lot of land failure. So in dealing with tree planting, we kind of tend to say that it's up to the landscape maintenance district people, and guess who runs them? The city council. So it all comes back to, looking at how we can optimize the use of the funds. And if we have 125 grand here per year, that's total. It might be just good to say, well, does that cover all the other needs that we have as well as we're doing the budget planning?
But again, just to remind the commission, a lot of these are comments on the budget, the dollar amount, and then whether we should add more projects to this list. This is not the venue to do that because none of us can commit any of the
I'm
funds
almost
of the
done.
city.
And you can just take that, I have to say. And at this point, one of the things that would be consistent with the 2006-2008 plan and any future plan, and that is, can we acquire properties as we did the park and ride in Old Town, but can we acquire property maybe with other people's money and a little bit of our money, to actually put some workforce housing in Old Town for all the restaurant workers and all the shopkeepers and everybody else. So I just wanted to get those on the record, and I'm sure they'll go to the council and they'll say, I wish that guy would just keep his mouth shut. That's
No, that's okay.
When you see those things, if you see something and you say something and it's appropriate, it'll help us do a better job at the council and on staff when it comes to actually anticipating the budgetary needs and what's the vision? What are we going to do now? And whose dime and whose time, right? So
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks.
that's my story.
Thanks for the
I'm
comment.
sticking to it.
So are there any other issues, any other items listed that may or may not be consistent, or any other thoughts? John, yeah.
I'm sorry. go ahead.
I was just, the problem here is that what we'd really like to be involved in is the development of this list, not commenting on the consistency. Because it's just not that hard to make these consistent with the general plan, given the broad statements in the general plan. So I don't have any, I find based on my review that all of this stuff is consistent with the general plan, including all the stuff we did last year and all the new stuff. I do think it's interesting. This is getting very esoteric and I don't want to spend much time on it, but just to pick on Dennis's point about tree planting, there's no question tree planting is consistent with the general plan. However, what if the amount is so small that it doesn't really implement the general plan? This capital improvement project, what if instead of $25,000 a year, what if it was $10 a year? Could you then say that it's so minuscule and insignificant, it makes this capital improvement project inconsistent with the general plan because it's absurdly low? I frankly think, I know we're not supposed to talk about the amount of money. I think 125,000 is chicken feed for tree planting for all the problems that Dennis has pointed out. If I were God, I would make that number different.
Unless
I'm not God.
If we go and find partners who are doing the same thing and align ourselves with them, our 125 might go quite a long ways. But if you're dealing with the National Park Service, who has a nursery growing 10,000 oak trees as we speak,
right,
and milkweed plants for the monarch butterflies
right,
to replant. So it's not inconsistent with the general plan of 2006, 2008, but we are facing issues that are significant in our current planning for a general plan update.
But I am mindful of what Michael said. Hey, if you got some great ideas and you want to make this list better, different, go to the city council and go to the staff who's handling this first and try to convince them that that specific project ought to be modified at the city council level. And I'm mindful of that. I realize it's not our.
Were these projects developed by staff or directed by the council?
They're developed in coordination between staff and the budget committee, and then moved on to the council.
All right.
And the budget committee, of course, is a committee of the council.
Correct.
But I agree with you totally, John, on the trees, certainly. And the milkweed, I just saw some yesterday at I don't know if you Bob.
Yeah, Commissioner Moore took the words right out of my mouth. The general plan is so broad that you can almost say everything could fall under it. But without evaluating the price tag, it's really meaningless. So my question really is, so we should just ignore, as Michael has suggested, the cost and just say, yeah, it's feasible because the general plan is so broad, so we're approving it. And really, what does that mean?
I feel like I'm gonna have to now restate it in some third way, because I've said this in two other ways before. It's simply a matter of deciding whether or not any of the listed given projects is something that had not been anticipated in any way, shape, or form by the general plan, directly or indirectly. Such as, for example, we're going to build a new interchange suddenly at Monroe Road, and it's in the CIP. Do you think with this group would say that's consistent with the general plan?
That's what I'm going to.
Absolutely not. You would not.
I'm going to say it's inconsistent.
So that is an example. That's why this is done. You look at some of these lists, and of course, you're going to say, given how general and broad reaching the general plan is with its 11 elements, by the way, Dennis, more than just the 7 minimum. It's a very comprehensive document. It has policies all over the place. So to find that there are policies that would support some of these isn't necessarily difficult. It's difficult to search through everything and find them because there's so many. But you didn't have to do that. I did that for you. It's in here. You can find the consistency. There are no inconsistencies because there are no projects such as the hypotheticals I've brought up a couple of times now. And that's basically all that's required of this body under state law. It's a perfunctory thing. It's just the way that the state makes sure that cities and counties are not just shooting from the hip and spending taxpayers' monies on Project X or Project Y when they came up with a policy document that said they're not going to do Project X or Project Y. And we have a policy document, it's a general plan, and we shouldn't be doing projects that are inconsistent with that. That's basically what it is. It's not whether there's enough money to get it done, whether there should be more money in year 2. Those are good things to talk about, as I said, but not in a determination whether it's consistent.
Do you have any items in here that you think are inconsistent?
Yeah, I do have.
And by the way, some parts of the general plan are inconsistent. So anyway.
You want the specific one now?
Oh, yeah, let's go through it because I have a couple that I think are inconsistent.
Okay, the proposed work at West Calabasas Road.
Oh, that's one of mine. The
Yeah.
roundabout.
What page are you on?
It's okay. So the roundabout's on page 2 of the first part. It's a $4.45 million project to extend a sidewalk about a block, widen Calabasas Road, and put a roundabout right at the bridge of Muro Road, which, by the way, Muro Road is not in Calabasas. So this is at the edge of the city. I went out there, I looked, because I've driven over that. The traffic flows smoothly right now. If you put a roundabout in there, it's actually inconsistent with the circulation element because it will impede traffic. And you will also have to put in lights, which violate our scenic corridor ordinance. You'll have to, I mean, this is definitely inconsistent with our general plan, as far as I can see. The sidewalk to nowhere, you widen the street, it ruins the scenic corridor, the lighting, the traffic is impeded.
This is page 2 of 10?
This is page 2. Let me see.
Page 2 of 10 of Exhibit A is what
It's in
Chair Harrison.
and where? I'm sorry. It's in the middle one. It's called West. It's what Bob called West Calabasas Road.
Thank you.
So they have to widen the road for 610 feet. They have to extend the sidewalk for a block that goes nowhere, by the way. It's a sidewalk from like the Audi dealer to nowhere. And put another roundabout in, which impedes traffic. And people won't easily understand it. Right now, it flows very smoothly across that bridge, both directions. This is a serious problem to me. This should not be in here. It violates our circulation element, if you ask me. It'll
Can I
impede
pick
traffic.
up on that?
Yeah,
for a
sure.
second?
Go ahead.
Michael,
Not to mention the cost of.
Michael, a question for you. When we did the zone overlay, I think that we actually required a number of dealers to contribute to funding to fix up Calabasas Road, basically from Parkway Calabasas to the Moreau Bridge.
No, that was not the case. You're remembering an effort leading into that, where we looked at a business improvement district for that corridor in advance of doing the West Calabasas Road corridor plan, that master plan. The master plan, when it was done, preserved the possibility we might still look into doing that and create essentially a taxing district just for that, whereby those property owners would all contribute. That was never implemented. The car overlay zone was just a zoning effort consistent with the master plan, and it did not create a funding mechanism either. Neither one of them did.
So again, I think this violates the circulation element. I mean, inconsistent with, I should say. I think it's inconsistent with the open space element and the scenic corridor ordinance.
If I may suggest,
not to mention the colossal
to make a finding of inconsistency, I believe this body would have to cite a policy specifically that is consistent with, in the same sense that I've identified policies that I believe they're consistent with.
Okay, so if you want us to come back at the next meeting, we will. Because I don't have it in front of me it definitely violates the circulation element. This will impede traffic. It violates the open space element because now you're constructing sidewalks, lights, and that's not consistent with the city of Calabasas. Why would we want a big roundabout at the intersection of Muro Road at the edge of our city when there's hardly any traffic there now? And it flows smoothly. This just makes no sense to me.
Well, you're stating a big roundabout. I don't think it's specified in here how large the roundabout is, but a roundabout is used in many locations, not just in the city, but all over the world as a safety tool to manage an intersection.
Unsafe. This would be less safe and impede traffic.
That intersection is relatively unsafe right now. There's sightline distance that are hard to see. I believe the intent of this roundabout is to make that intersection safer. Whether you agree or not, I guess is a different story, but that
so
is.
if you want to come back at the next meeting,
also
I'll cite chapter and verse if you want. But that's just my feeling and Commissioner Leah's feeling. I don't know about the other commissioners, what they think about that roundabout there. Not to mention, I mean, the expense for that, when we don't even paint the crosswalks in the city, you could kill yourself walking across the street out of City Hall here. There's the crosswalk's invisible because of time and the color of the street and the color of the crosswalk. So no money anywhere in here for crosswalks in this entire city, but $4.5 million for a needless roundabout that's going to impede traffic and be unsafe. That makes no sense to me. But I don't know, again, what the other commissioners think. So we can bring it back if you want.
Well, Tom was correct in correcting me about the timing of, I guess the progression that we were looking at in dealing with the improvement of Calabasas Road at Moreau Bridge. And at the time, we were also looking at the pedestrian needs to get to Hidden Hills because some folks could conceivably walk to school at Round Meadow there, although they don't. And the bridge has always been threatened with, widening as a means of opening the throat of the bypass of the 101 freeway, and it is a very busy intersection, Michael. It's not that there's nobody there.
No, it flows. But we took
but
the
there's also
out.
Funding that we collected from the auto dealers to fix up the operation of that very intersection, not with a roundabout, but with the anticipation that there was going to be a great deal more traffic going to the dealers. So it would be good not to say that it's inconsistent at this point, although you're bringing up, I think, good points there, but we should look at what the consistency is. And if everything else is okay, I think we can improve it, but ask the council to take a look at what ought to be done with the Moreau Bridge roundabout proposal in the budget.
The problem though is.
One thing I'd like to remind the commission is that when you're looking at Traffic and Transportation Commission, Traffic and Transportation Improvements in the CIP, they've already been vetted by the TTC as well.
Right.
So the Traffic and Transportation Commission has looked through this, not just the council budget committee and staff.
Bob, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
As I come back to what I said before, the general plan is so broad that you could say everything is consistent here. But that doesn't make sense. You can't say it's consistent. That intersection is one that I probably use more so than any of the other commissioners here. A traffic signal could do what you're trying to do with a roundabout. Just because we receive money doesn't mean we should spend it on projects that don't benefit the city.
But if I can interrupt, I think the problem is that whether it's a roundabout, a traffic signal, or the existing somewhat of a mess intersection are all policy questions. And I think any of those is probably, because of the words you just said, consistent with the general plan. If, on the other hand, you had a bridge to nowhere, if somewhere in here there's a sidewalk that goes nowhere, that would not be consistent. That would not have a rational basis. Okay.
And no,
but this roundabout,
money, right.
you may be 100% correct. This is a dumb idea, but it's a dumb policy idea that's been vetted by somebody. It's not irrational. It has a rational, the roundabout has a rational basis. Maybe something better. I agree with you. But that's not, our job is not to say, our job is really say, is it consistent? As Bob has pointed out, everything's consistent.
Well, so it may be consistent with one part, but I think it's very inconsistent with the open space, with our scenic corridor ordinance, with lighting, the lighting and all that.
That could be
And even
and
conservation.
he's saying, where's the specific policy word?
Do you have a question about whether any new additional land has to be acquired for this roundabout?
Yeah,
Because if that's
it's
the
saying that
question,
it's lighting the
the
road.
answer is no.
It's saying
It's all-
lighting the road.
Well,
And-
it's within the right of way. It's within the area that's already in the city's control for roadway and sidewalk use. So it's not going into open space. So I don't know why you've come to that
Because you're going
conclusion.
to be installing lights, lots of lights at a roundabout there. And if you don't, you're going to have lots of traffic.
Roundabouts do not require
Of course
lights.
it'll impact traffic. No, this is a bad idea. It's inconsistent to me. And you're not going to convince me otherwise on this one. On another item is on page 3 that Dennis brought this up. It's $100,000 for the outside teak furniture. This violates the conservation ordinance as far as I'm concerned. First of all, spending $100,000 to replace 14-year-old teak furniture, that's ludicrous. But even if you wanted to do it, if you go outside, there isn't a splinter, there isn't a scratch on it. Teak lasts for 75 years. To replace it at 14 years is wasting resources. So that violates conservation element as far as I can see. I don't understand that one at all. Oil it if you don't like the way the weathered look of teak. But there isn't even that much for $100,000. It's just shocking to me.
Any more?
I have questions more like questions. So there's one about the shade structure at the senior center, which I think is, for $350,000, which I think is part of, the recreation, whatever that element was called, parks, which I understand, but I'm concerned about that. And I think it's not for this year, but I'm concerned. I hope staff, somebody is speaking with the joint venture that between one of the Cruzan companies and the related companies who are going to be building something in our parking lot here. And maybe, we don't know if they get an urban planner or somebody in there to help, or staff about switching the senior center from where it's located now and putting it in building A, for example, then which is 23925 Park Serrano across the street. If something like that is worked out and the senior center becomes senior housing, you wouldn't want to put a shade structure there. It's just wasting money. So I think it's just premature. I think it's definitely consistent, but it's, I just hope that somebody, staff or somebody, or a planner or council, somebody is speaking with that joint venture to solve the problems that we heard about at our last meeting from Charlotte Meyer, and I'm sure we'll hear other people as well. So that's not an inconsistency issue, but it would be if we're not even going to be, if the configuration changes. That's.
I'm going to refrain from commenting on any potential project that might be coming from the commission.
Well, I heard it last time. I mean, I was listening to Charlotte Meyer and.
It's not on your agenda tonight, Mr. Chair.
No, what's on is senior shade structure. And I think it's just just watch that. It may be premature if it may be inconsistent if there is senior center is not there, or it's, part of it's located somewhere else. So that's all.
Michael?
Yeah. Oh,
Can I ask a question about
things that should be
procedure?
here that are not there? Is that something we should address?
it's probably not in the capital
No,
improvement budget
again, it's
or plan.
this.
Yeah, I can jump in here as well. We're just focusing on what projects are listed and in compliance there.
May I ask a question of you guys on procedure here? If we don't sign off on this tonight, does that mess up our timing in dealing with the update to the general plan or to the budget or to anything else? And legally, are some of these, I guess, separable, where if there's a question or an issue, can we approve everything except the 3 or 4 items that have been in controversy up here?
That's a good idea.
With regards to the general plan, it's not going to hold anything up, but I'll let Epi answer whether or not anything is inseparable and how this relates to the budget.
So items can be removed, or we can move everything to another date for further discussion. If the commission doesn't feel comfortable approving a single project or all the projects or the CIP tonight.
Well, I think it's just a few that I've only heard a couple, but I don't know, Gregor, do you have any others that?
There was another part of that question that's not yet been answered. Epi, could you chime in on whether a delay on this commission's finding a consistency making a consistency determination even on just one item, is that going to delay the budget as it goes through its process with the city council?
How can it when the numbers don't mean anything?
I think staff might be better equipped, but with their nuances and understanding the budget process itself, my understanding is that it might cause a delay, but if staff has different information, then I'll defer to them.
For the council to approve the budget, which includes the CIP, it's supposed to, at least under state law, have been vetted by this body and deemed consistent. I don't think that prevents the council, because they have actually approved a budget with a CIP that never even found its way into this chamber before this body in the past several times. Not because we didn't try to get here, but that's all water under the proverbial bridge. So I do think it would be unfortunate if we did not have this completed by the time the council would consider the CIP as part of the budget, but I don't think they would hold off on their duties.
Well, we have a meeting on June 1st, I believe, unless, well, you'll tell us about that, I guess.
It's going to be canceled.
Oh, okay. So we only have a couple of items that I think are outstanding, that at least to me, the teak furniture and the roundabout. I don't know if anybody else objects to anything else. Yes.
Well, I don't so much object to it again, but let's talk to the
being consistent.
financial expenditure software. The general plan doesn't say you should buy financial software, but you can certainly build that in. That's what I mean. You say don't look at the numbers yet. You have to look at the numbers.
Well, so there's an element. So I think, as Tom said, there's 4 extra elements beyond what's required. And one of them was something like infrastructure or something.
Well, the new financial software. In the general plan implementation chapter, it says, quote, "The city will continue to update technology capabilities and implement new technologies as they become available." That's on page 13-9 of the general plan.
Doesn't say software.
It says technologies. Software is part of technology. If this commission wants verbatim consistency, then I guess you're going to ask for that. But from staff's perspective, it does not have to say new financial software as a policy statement or as an implementation measure.
Maybe there's another answer to this, and that would be to say, if we determine that the CIP by law requiring the planning commission to approve that the CIP is consistent with our existing general plan, if we can do that and alert the council to the issues that have been raised this evening, that would be almost like separability, and we could make progress on what needs to be done in order to meet our budget deadlines. So Effie, you probably need to help us on this one. Can we in fact note the issues that have been identified here as stumbling blocks? Let's just call them that for the moment.
Well, I think that's an interesting, if I can,
Yeah,
I think that's an interesting way to handle this. Because the council is going to, it's not looking only at consistency, it's looking at the merits, is it not?
The merits on all levels to include monetary, of course.
I understand. So that if we said we find this program consistent with the general plan, but we think these are dumb ideas because,
or it's ill-advised.
It's ill-advised. But it's ill-advised because the roundabout is too expensive. The
violates other parts of the general.
It doesn't violate, but it's
inconsistent with.
Well, it's the same as you can't have it both ways. You can't say it's consistent and then say it's inconsistent. Because you can say it. You can say it's consistent, but it is unreasonable because.
I actually think there's so many. I think there are inconsistencies in our general plan.
Well,
and because
I should say that,
because I think something like that is inconsistent with the open space,
or it's consistent with one and inconsistent with the conflict.
Yes.
And I'm not prepared to agree with that, but I'm also not prepared to disagree with
right. But I think as Dennis said, the stumbling blocks and approving it with that sort of caveat.
Yeah, I'm happy to approve it with caveats that says, but provided, however, the council needs to understand that we're concerned about.
That's fine. And then
in essence, they're looking for our advice and consent, and it isn't a rubber stamp,
right?
Because we have to deal with these things just as if we're dealing with somebody proposing a big house on Dantes View. So it's important that our experience and judgment, inform the council as to the issues that are our current stumbling blocks. Because I have the same concerns you do about the Moreau intersection. But there's an interesting thing on page 3 of the staff report under environmental review and item number 1, the last sentence kind of captures the concern I have. It says, thus the general plan conformance review fails to meet the project approval requirement under CEQA, and no environmental impact review is required. But language might be better to say, in this instance, the general plan performance review is not bound by the project approval requirement. And therefore, just as we oftentimes say, there's no CEQA review for a single family home on Dantes View that has to be dealt with. In a way, it's the same conceptual framework dealing with here. It's like, if we can't comment meaningfully, then we're frankly just a rubber stamp for a state law, which I frankly resent. That's why it's not our staff, it's not our legal counsel, it's not any of the commissioners of the council for the matter. It's the state law that we have to conform to, and that's what the opening part of this whole recommendation is about. It's like, you must get your planning commission to agree that your general plan and your CIP is consistent. That's where we are.
Right.
Well, we could have a motion that says, well, while we as a commission find the CIP generally consistent with the general plan, however, we have significant concerns as to the merits and costs of
certain
items, including the West Calabasas Road item and the Civic Center Plaza furniture replacement item. If there's any other item we want to put in there, did you have another one?
I had the software, but that was just as an example.
Yeah.
Or, because I don't have a problem.
Oh, yeah, that was.
And that we recommend
software.
and that this motion would include, and therefore we recommend that the city council carefully evaluate the merits and costs of those items that we brought to your attention.
Which may be inconsistent with other, there may be some, I don't know how to even say that. But
Let me ask a question of this, Michael and Tom. Could this report have been submitted without dollar amounts?
I could have submitted it without dollar amounts, sure. But what I did, the reason the dollar amounts are there is because I had available to me as input, if you will, for my report, the document that is Exhibit B, which actually, as you'll notice by the page numbers, is actually just a part of a much bigger document, which is basically the draft budget. So I took the CIP pages literally from the draft budget, and I provided them to you because it's a public document as a draft budget. And it is that way I could be sure that what I presented to you is exactly what the council was looking at. So that's why you have that to include that. It also shows there's a backup point. Like, for example, the very first one, you can see whether you agree with the dollar amounts or not. The very first page on Exhibit B, which is the guardrails replacement, that's something they do every year. So it shows that they've actually anticipated spending money every year to do it each year of that over the 5-year CIP. So that corroborates what I said in my report. So there were some reasons why I didn't just ignore it. I didn't leave it out. I included it as backup information, not with the intent that this commission was going to then look at those dollar amounts and dissect them. That wasn't the intent.
I don't think we're questioning the veracity of the report or the staff effort in this instance. What we're questioning, I think, we just tend to do this, and that is, is this a priority that I'm happy with? I'm not happy with Moreau Road roundabout, but someone has it built into the CIP. And by my voting to approve the CIP as being consistent with the thing, whether I get to the rationale that you did, which is we're going to have lights and we're going to have, spillover traffic or whoever and whatever else, and that needs an environmental impact report. Well, not necessarily. If we are able to communicate our concern about that issue, having seen the report and seen the amount of money, it's not a criticism of staff or any commissioner or the council or anybody. At this point, it's an observation that we feel collectively. And I'm trying to figure out how we progress at this point. And I think you're going there, John, as well. And did you have a language fix that we might use? Because,
well, I for one made a note that at 8:51 of the tape for this meeting, when I have the chance to review the tape, that's when Commissioner Mueller was coming up with some excellent language. So I can take that exactly in terms of words to put in the form of a resolution if this commission wants for the next meeting or whatever. I don't know. Michael may have a better idea.
Well, there's no resolution required by the commission. This is just a vote, motion, and then a vote, and then it moves on. So there will be no resolution that is formally adopted by the commission.
We could put it in the minutes. I should have said it that way.
We could put it in the minutes. And we can also encourage the city manager to relay to the city council to take a look at these specific points of the meeting.
Because even in the motion, it'll be more specific than just yes or no. I have a question of Tatiana. Maybe you have some information about that proposed roundabout. Is that being funded by some outside source or something?
Yes, it's a Measure M project.
Is it return money or is it a grant essentially from MTA?
It's money from MTA, yes.
Meaning it doesn't
Grant.
cost us anything? Is that it?
Yeah, it's fully covered by, fully funded by Measure M.
But we don't have to, okay.
It's not general fund.
I think that's what's driving it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
To be specific, it's not coming from the general fund. So like crosswalk upgrades that you're talking about, that would likely come from the general fund.
that's painting, painting a stripe.
But
I don't know
that's
why
a different funding source.
hopefully it doesn't cost 100,000 like the cheap
Well,
furniture.
but here's the problem with that is that if the five of us vote to approve this, then we are essentially sanctioning getting the money from MTA and doing the project, because you don't get the money unless you sanction the project.
Got it. I get it.
And that's the way it is. And that's what that we fixed up Las Virgenes Road, and we fixed up Mulholland Highway, and we fixed up Old Town Calabasas in part by, understanding how we can get money from these various agencies that take our money and then rarely give it back. In this instance, we have an opportunity to fund something that some of us don't feel is appropriate.
I mean, fixing Calabasas Road is one thing, but not the round. Greg, you had a comment.
Yeah, I think the conversation's gone off the rails here, and we're not addressing what we're to be addressing here. Now, I think, I find that all this is consistent with the general plan. There's always there's always contradictions between aspects of the general plan. In general, this all appears to be, conform pretty well to what the general plan requires. I think it's important. I mean, all this stuff is generated internally, and this list of projects is all generated internally by the city. There's not public input. And I think that if we as commissioners have specific concerns, then we should go to the council members that have placed us here, tell them what they are, put that on the record. And, the bottom line is that this is our taxpayer money. Many of these projects is getting spent this way. If we have a problem the way that's being done, then that's something maybe we can talk to our respective council members about and not air it here. So I find that these are consistent with the general plan, and I have no problem saying we're good with this. That's my 2 cents.
All right. Must have been frustrating for you to sit through all this. John, you had some wording about approving this, but with certain.
Well, I would simply say that we can, I would make a motion that we find the CIP consistent with the general plan, semicolon. However, we, as a commission, recommend that the city council review items, and then we only have the 2 items as to the merits and costs of those capital improvement projects.
Is that okay? Okay. All right. Is that okay?
Let's just be sure that in terms of the projects that you would recommend the council review as to merits and costs, that would be the Civic Center furniture replacement,
Yeah,
right?
Outside furniture.
The roundabout at Calabasas Road. And does that include the financial software or not? It needs to be consensus by all of you. Okay, so those 2, is that right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, do we need a do you want to second that or?
I'll second.
Okay. Any further discussion? No? All right. Everybody in favor? Aye.
Aye.
You were aye, Dennis? Okay.
Yeah.
So it's unanimous. We don't have to poll anybody. Okay.
Your suggestion of talking to the council about any of the specifics, at least so it's raised there, because it obviously raised our apples in some instances. So
I'm sorry about that. That did get me going. Okay. Next is director's report and then report from planning commissioners.
So as I mentioned, our plan is to cancel the June 1st planning commission meeting. I do not believe we have anything trending from a public hearing standpoint, but we will return